Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Lack, here with a brief solo intro before we get into the main body of the episode. This was a huge episode, a really fun episode you're going to hear, but sadly some of it went missing in the edit. We had kind of a weird technical error while I was editing the episode and putting it all together. I was exporting the episode out of the software we use called Audacity, and we had a massive crash, and basically all of the master files got severely corrupted to the point where Audacity could not read them anymore, so we lost the master of the podcast. Luckily, what was being exported, I was able to retrieve what had been exported so far, and that was about the first 3 hours and 10 minutes of today's episode, so that survives, luckily. You're going to hear all of that as it was originally recorded. We talk about Pokemon, we talk about Jedi Fallen Order, we talk about a bunch of news from Xbox and movies, all sorts of things. We talk about a bunch of movie reviews. Where we started to lose stuff was near the end of the episode. We get into a segment where we were talking about Disney Plus, and then we talked about The Mandalorian, the Star Wars show, and the massive data loss happened right as we were about to talk about The Mandalorian. So what you're going to hear today is everything that survives up through that Disney Plus conversation. It's not the full Disney Plus conversation, but I thought there was some good back and forth, so I saved as much of it as I could. The Mandalorian review could not be reconstructed. It was more or less completely lost. There was nothing we could do about that, but we will talk about The Mandalorian next week or in a coming episode, and there'll be more episodes out, so we'll get to talk about more of it, and it'll be fun. We liked the show. Well, I say that a little bit later in the episode. I will let you know when we get to that point in the episode when things are transitioning, because there's also an extra segment at the very end of this episode where I was able to salvage some material from a segment we recorded where we sort of played a fun, weird trivia game that I put together, and I was able to reconstruct that, so you'll still hear that at the end of the episode. So really the only thing missing from the data loss is the Mandalorian review. I know that sucks, but I have to tell you, we had a 4-hour recording session today and losing only about 25 minutes of it total when we could have lost the whole thing feels good. So thank God we have as much of this episode as we do. But yeah, that's it for me for now. Here's the full episode as we originally recorded it. We really hope you enjoy. It's a fun one. And yeah, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack
and Sean Chapman.
This week on the show, we are talking about everything. I've seen a bunch of movies. We've played a bunch of games. There's a new Pokemon game out. There's a new Star Wars game out. There's a new Star Wars show out. There's a new Disney streaming service out. There's a bunch of news. Xbox had an event. We learned some stuff about Anthem. Sonic the Hedgehog got a digital makeover. Sean, this is going to be a busy one.
Yep. No, yeah, a lot of shit has happened, and we missed last week. But honestly, I don't feel like that affected it almost at all, because everything happened just in this week.
Yeah.
It's a weird... Usually what happens is, if we miss a week, we have 2 weeks of news piled up. This is how this podcast episode would have been basically no matter what.
Yep, pretty much. All right. So, yes, let's dive in. Sean, little bit of housekeeping and stuff. I just had one thing I wanted to mention, which is last week while we were on our little 1-week break, I was bored, and I made a silly video for our YouTube channel, mostly just because I was bored. But I got the Hitman 2 DLC, which I don't know if you've played yet.
I haven't gotten around to it yet, just because I have not had time, and I just want to wait till, winter break or something, that I have some time to just luxuriate in Hitman. So I've just let a bunch of both the new maps and just a bunch of, escalation stuff to pile up, so I have a good chunk of Hitman to get to at some point.
Yeah, and I wanted to check out the new maps, and they had over the, I think, Halloween sale, they had the DLC pack, the expansion pass, for $12, which was kind of crazy because it's normally $40. Mm-hmm. So I saved a lot of money that way, bought it. I was playing around in the New York map, and I made a silly YouTube video about it. Did you watch it, Sean?
I clicked through it. I didn't have time to watch the whole thing, but because you sent me the link, because I had not noticed that you'd made that video, so I sort of browsed through it. I think I got the gist of what the video is.
The video is presented as a normal how-to walkthrough, but the joke, I'll just give it to you now, you can go watch it on our YouTube channel. The whole idea is, I am bad at Hitman, and the first time I play a level, I basically just kind of wind up ignoring all the story stuff, and I just kind of, go for it on instinct, and I do very poorly. So what I did, Sean, is I basically took a first run through of the New York level where I had no rhyme or reason to anything I was doing, took the raw footage, wrote a script to it as if this was a like step-by-step guide to my crazy method of it, like completely serious, and it is sort of a tongue-in-cheek, just me going through that, and I was kind of, I tried several different versions of it before I finally kind of finished it and put it out, and I'm kind of happy with the final version. It's extremely dumb, but if people want to watch it and give me some feedback, I don't know if I'll ever do anything like that again. I was just bored one weekend, and I thought it would be fun, and I realized the PS4 lets you save footage very easily in some of their, like, they've updated the sharing stuff so much over the years. Now you can just, like, save an hour of footage if you want to, so it's very easy to, like, grab footage off of there without a capture card or anything. So, yeah, that's what I did, because we didn't have a podcast last week.
Well, there you go. We've got some fresh new content on the YouTube channel.
And you can watch that if you want to, feel a few brain cells die.
There you go. Yes, I did see you got a 5-star rating at the end of the mission, so I was pretty impressed.
Yes, I absolutely did. Sean, I want to hear what you've been up to in just a second. I'm going to try another crazy Mountain Dew flavor I found on the podcast.
Our new recurring segment.
This is Mountain Dew Merry Mashup. It's their Christmas flavor. It says cranberry pomegranate flavor with other natural flavors. Natural flavors in Mountain Dew. Sure. Anyway, you tell us what you've been up to, and then I'll give us an update on what the fuck Mountain Dew Merry Mash is.
Okay, well, while Jonathan is destroying his taste buds, I'm just going to luxuriate in my having the Godzilla set.
Yes.
The last time we podcasted was like a day or two before I got my Godzilla set in. It is beautiful. It is perfect. I've not sort of fully dove into anything other than I watched Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla because I was like personally obligated to, now that I own a version of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla that is more modern than a VHS, I sort of jumped the whole DVD spectrum and went straight to Blu-ray. And it's the first time I'd ever seen that movie with the proper Japanese dialogue. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla kicks ass. Jonathan, does Mountain Dew Merry whatever the fuck, does that kick ass like Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla?
Are you asking me because I just made a weird face?
Yes, you made an expression to the camera that indicated I should ask you.
I don't know. I'm going to have to take another... I can taste the cranberry. It's weird. It's very weird. I'll get back to you on this. Keep going.
Okay.
I'm only taking one sip.
Okay, so...
I have the Godzilla set too, I got to say, though, and it is a wonderful... Well, yeah, we heard it on the podcast last time. It's very cool.
Yes. Yeah, so Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is great. The transfers of the movies are fantastic. They have... So, like, the main thing, honestly, like, I dug into was the last disc, because that's the disc that has all the bonus materials on it. That's also where, if you want to watch the Japanese version of King Kong vs. Godzilla, that's where that version of the movie is, which is weird. It's probably some sort of weird rights thing with Universal. Who knows how the fuck all that shit works out. But like I did sort of click through a little bit. I watched the octopus scene from King Kong vs. Godzilla because that scene's very good, and that's like a good transfer. It's not like they had to put a shitty version of the Japanese track on there. It is just as good looking as the normal English language version as well on the King Kong vs. Godzilla disc. So people concerned about that kind of stuff, it is as comprehensive a collection as you could like imagine basically being put together. All the extra features are great. There's a fan-fucking-tastic interview with Akira Ifukube, the composer for most of the classic Godzilla movies. That's from some like Japanese interview show from the 90s. That he is just in his fucking office, just with like a million instruments behind him, and he's smoking through the entire interview. It's like a 20-minute interview with lots of cuts. So that was probably like a 2-hour conversation. The dude was smoking cigarette the entire time. It's fucking the most like 1990s old Japanese dude fucking conversation. There's a whole aside where he spends about 5 minutes explaining the like mathematical equation of how you of like different notes based on the length of strings being plucked, as he's explaining how they made the Godzilla roar sound effect. And the best part is the whole thing of him explaining that the mathematical formula was for like the way of plucking a string that is not the way of plucking a string they used to do the Godzilla roar. So it was entirely useless information for the topic, but it's just, you could tell this dude knows his shit so far inside and out, the way he's just like throwing out like this random math equation. It's like, oh, that's how that works. Anyways, that's not what we did. So that interview is great. There's an interview with Ishiro Honda, the original director of Godzilla and a bunch of the Showa era films. That's like an hour-long interview. That the person interviewing him is Yoshimitsu Banno, who is the guy who directed Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. So that's it's like a cool conversation, and Honda kind of goes through his whole career and his history of filmmaking and being friends with Akira Kurosawa. He calls Akira Kurosawa Kurosawa-kun, which is very adorable, because that's not something you ever hear anyone say, because he's this so tremendously respected director, but they were like roommates and shit. So
Ishiro Honda must be one of the like 5 people on Earth who can do that.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like they were good friends, because Ishiro Honda also like worked on Ran and Kagemusha and a lot of the later Kurosawa films after he kind of retired from directing his own movies. So he kind of just goes through his whole career, his pre-Godzilla movies, Godzilla stuff. It's really great. Like, I got almost like weirdly emotional at times watching that interview, just like the way that Honda sort of like sees the world, and him talking about, because he was also, he was a soldier in World War II for a lot, like for like the whole war. Like he like saw some shit in the war. He wasn't in Japan when the bomb dropped, but he came back home and went through Hiroshima after the bomb dropped, and that's part of what informed him creating Godzilla. So like that whole interview is fantastic. If you have any interest in Godzilla or the history of that franchise, like that interview is an absolute must watch. And then also I have to say, all the if you get the full collection, all the little like essay bits written in there for each of the movies, because they kind of do the same thing they did with Zatoichi, where each movie has a several paragraph long introduction. Those are really good. They give I've
read a couple of them. They're really good.
Yeah, they give a lot of good, like, historical context. I don't agree with all the opinions on Godzilla movies expressed in those. I think it doesn't give the credit to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla that Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is due.
I noticed that when I was reading it through, because it said it was like, this was kind of a lesser one, and I'm like, oh, Sean's not going to like that.
It's worth shit. Like, I rewatched Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. That movie kicks so much fucking ass. There's maybe no better 30 seconds of movie ever made than when Mechagodzilla reveals its true nature in, like, the first third of that movie, when he just explodes his fake Godzilla skin off, and it's just, the soundtrack of that movie is perfect, the just cheesy editing and everything, it's amazing. That movie is fantastic. But yeah, usually there aren't even really that many, like, here's, like, a critical discussion of the like, values of this movie in terms of, is it a good movie or a bad movie? It's more just like, let me contextualize what this movie is. And for some of those, that is really useful, for when, like, here's when this director took over from Honda, here's, like, how the fuck All Monsters Attack got made, which is the movie that's like 2/3 footage from other Godzilla movies, all that kind of stuff. Most of it is stuff that I already knew, but there is stuff in there that I had never heard or read about. So it's pretty detailed and good stuff. So yeah, if you are really into Godzilla, or you want to be into Godzilla, this is like an absolute must-own. The art is just utterly gorgeous and fantastic throughout. So yeah, I've got a lot of Godzilla movies I can rewatch. And I'm very, very happy.
And the art is so good throughout that set. I just want to highlight that. I love looking at all the big pictures, and it's my favorite thing about the size of the set is that you get those really big reproductions of all the new artwork they've commissioned, and it's great. I love whichever movie it is where Godzilla does his fun jump. The artwork of Godzilla doing his fun jump is fantastic.
Yes, Invasion of the Astro Monster. That was a good choice. You know what that movie is immediately upon, like, flipping. It's like, oh yes, that's the movie where that GIF comes from.
Yes, it's great. I have not watched the movies yet. I watched the original Godzilla again, actually, just because I'm like, well, if I want to move through this set chronologically, let's start with the one I know. And there's nothing new on that disc. That's the existing Criterion disc for Godzilla, because you can't really improve on it. But that's still, obviously, a great movie. It's your favorite movie ever. I see why. It's fantastic. And I want to watch more. I have been very, very busy with other things, and I have not had time to watch more Godzilla. But I'm sure we will get to it at some point.
Yes, we must talk about Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. You need to watch it. It's so good.
I will tell you, Sean, here's a little fun fact. I am At some point, probably in the next year, I'm going to be up in the queue to teach our film club class at U Iowa, which is this 1 semester hour course where you just show a movie each week to undergrads, and they watch it, then we have like a half hour of discussion, and they get an easy credit hour, right? Mm-hmm. And you get to theme it on something, and my pitch I'm putting together is I want to do one themed around giant robots. This is how I will get to show Mobile Suit Gundam stuff, but that also means Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla goes right on that list.
Yeah, you could do Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Godzilla vs. Megalon, because that has Jet Jaguar in it.
I have that on there, too. I probably might stick to one, but if I want to go further, there is Jet Jaguar. Yes.
You can maybe assign that as, like, homework. If you want to go home and watch Godzilla vs. Megalon, and then write an essay about how cool Jet Jaguar is and how ridiculous that fucking movie is, like, give him some extra points.
Yes. So I'm researching that, and I'm excited to watch Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla at some point. 1, because you've been hyping it for years, and 2, it's, I can teach it now if I want to. That really would not have been an option before, other than, like, finding a VHS, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, very cool stuff. Yeah, let's see. What else have I been up to? There's some other video game stuff that I think I'm not really going to get into today because there's just so much else going on. I've played about 5 hours of Luigi's Mansion 3. It's very solid, but it's kind of light, and it didn't fully hold my interest. And then I got to a boss that was such a horrible boss fight that I put the game down, and I have not come back to it yet. Not just because I didn't like the boss fight. There are a lot of games out right now, if you haven't noticed. Yeah. Too many games. Just too many games. And so Luigi's Mansion 3 is I've got it. I might play more of it later. It's interesting. Terry Bogard did come to Smash Brothers, the new Smash Brothers DLC character, and he's awesome. Terry Bogard is one of the coolest fighters in Smash now. He, I think, is more accessible than Ken or Ryu, the Street Fighter guys. I think you need to kind of understand Street Fighter mechanics a little more to play those guys. Terry feels better integrated into Smash, but he still has a ton of his classic moves from King of Fighters and stuff, and he's just really fun to mess around with. His stage is really damn cool. It's very different. It's like kind of a basic just like fighting arena, and you knock out your opponents by like kicking them into this like invisible wall, and if they're high enough they just get sent out and KO'd. So it's a little different than other Smash Brothers stages. Mm-hmm. And most impressively, most of the DLC characters come with, like, between 8 to 16 tracks of music, which is nice. Like, that's a good selection. Like, for Persona, you got, like, 6 Persona 5 songs and a couple from Persona 3 and 4, and that seemed very generous. Terry comes with 80 tracks, Sean. They just put in, like, a shit ton of music from every Neo Geo game under the sun, and it's amazing. Like, there's stuff in there from games Terry has nothing to do with, like Metal Slug and Samurai Showdown. And it's just like, if you want to play Smash now with some Neo Geo music or some SNK music, go for it. There's like 100 tracks in the game now. I'm not exaggerating. It's crazy.
Awesome. Yeah, I watched the video that Sakurai did, which I love just, like, comparing that to the other ones, as like, especially the Banjo one, where, like, it seems like he was kind of into Banjo and Kazooie, and then you go to Terry and Fatal Fury and KOF stuff, and he's like, here, let me tell you, like, here's a whole paragraph of information about, like, Iori from King of Fighters. It's not even the character. Like, he's just in the background of the stage sometimes. It's not even the DLC character. I swear he said more about, like, that dude than he said about fucking Kazooie in Banjo and Kazooie. It's great. Like, you can tell just how much Sakurai just loves KOF and Fatal Fury if you watch that video. It's so fucking funny.
It's great. It's great. Yeah, so before we move on to other stuff, update on Mountain Dew, because I forgot to tell you, now that I've actually taken a couple sips of this monstrosity, Sean.
Yeah.
I like the flavor. It is cranberry pomegranate. It does seem like a good way to describe it. It's a good flavor. It's got a weird, like, kick to it, though, that tastes like if you've ever had, like, sparkling cider or something. It's kind of got, like, that going down the throat. So it's weird. It does not, like, go down like other Mountain Dews. And I have a sinking suspicion it is a vat of every other Mountain Dew flavor possibly thrown together. And then they added some cranberry to, like, cover it, because it's kind of weird. But I'm okay with it. It tastes festive.
Okay, it tastes festive. I mean, that's what they're going for.
It is. It is. What other stuff do you have, Sean, before we move on to other things?
I finished up The Outer Worlds since the last time we talked. I like that game. It's not like my opinions on it have not changed dramatically. I think it has some really fun character stuff, and I like all the companions. But I think the main story is pretty predictable and kind of, it is like the main story I found ultimately kind of disappointing, just in kind of how unambitious it is, and especially it feels like a story that would have been written in like 2011, 2012, when most of like the game's mechanics kind of are pulled from. And it doesn't feel particularly well calibrated for, I think, the brand of sort of anti-capitalist narrative you were looking for in 2019. Like that, the standards on that have changed a lot in the past 10 years or so. So they have like a very kind of lukewarm, vaguely centrist kind of thing to say about their like weird hyper-capitalist hell future. I think the game is ultimately like not actually that interested into diving into the dynamics of the setting. It more just sort of uses this like ridiculous version of capitalism and people like working for the company and all this shit that they do more as a kind of like a fun goof that gives a little extra flavor to the world, but it's not something that like they really dive into in terms of like ideology or philosophy or even like theming. Really it's not much there. It kind of feels like you could transplant a lot of the game setting into a different setting and the core story would not really change all that much, and that feels like a big missed opportunity. So like, and that kind of keeps the game in this like it's pretty good level, but you can at points see how if they took a sharper left turn, if they're more ambitious or more confident in something, that the game could have been like really great in terms of its storytelling. And it's more just like, yeah, this is fine. It's like an enjoyable story. It's got some really fun characters. I really like Parvati, who's one of your companion characters. She's great. Like everyone, if you've heard anything about the game, you've probably heard about her because she's fantastic. And then there's another companion character named Ellie that I like a lot, that they do a lot of cool things with her once you kind of get into her backstory in the latter third of the game. But yeah, like Outer Worlds, I think it's like if you enjoy those kinds of games, pick it up, play it. Like it's totally fun. Maybe wait for it to be on sale, would be my recommendation. It's probably going to be like a number 10 slot in like the game of the year. Like it's good, not ambitious, wish it was better, but I enjoyed my time with it.
Interesting. Yeah, I am probably not going to play that game. Doesn't really sound like my kind of thing, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad we got to hear about it here.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's quickly roadmap the rest of the episode for people, Sean. Next, we're going to talk about I have seen a bunch of movies, and I'm going to review them as quickly as possible. Then we've got a bunch of news to talk about. We've got movie and gaming news, and we're going to then talk about video games, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and Jedi Fallen Order. That's coming up. And finally, we will be doing a game. We'll be talking about Disney Plus and about The Mandalorian, and we will finish the podcast with a little game that you and I are going to play about trivia about streaming services. Just wanted to make sure people know where we're going, because this isn't a long outline, and I also, for my own edification, wanted to make sure I know where we're going.
Yes. All right.
So, should I talk about some movies?
Yes. What movies have you been watching, Jonathan?
Sean, this is the craziest November for movies in... I honestly don't know how long. It's been like just a dearth... not dearth. It's just a huge amount of great sort of art house stuff coming to indie theaters, and then I think Hollywood has been putting out a lot of interesting stuff that I haven't even caught up with everything I want to see. And there's more coming out because we've got Thanksgiving week coming up. Rian Johnson's new movie is coming out, and that looks great. There's a bunch of other good stuff. So I've been kind of blown away, and I have been seeing a lot of movies. So I thought I would... This is not even everything I have seen in the last 2 weeks, Sean, but I will review 4 that I thought were really good. The first of which is Taika Waititi's new movie, Jojo Rabbit. We like Taika Waititi here. Jojo Rabbit, certainly one of the more hyped movies of the year. This is the Holocaust-era satire about a little German boy named Jojo who has kind of been inundated with Nazi propaganda, and he has an imaginary best friend who is Adolf Hitler, but Adolf Hitler played by Taika Waititi in a very funny performance. And over the course of the movie, he finds out his mother is hiding a little Jewish girl in the attic to protect her, and so Jojo kind of has to confront his prejudices. Have you seen this movie, Sean? I'm just curious.
No, I haven't seen any of the movies you're going to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, Jojo Rabbit is it's my least favorite of these 4 I'm going to talk about, but I did like it. I think it's very interesting. It's a movie I feel like I need to see again, because I think whatever you're expecting going in, this movie isn't quite it. It is a satire. I don't find it particularly funny, and I don't know if that's a problem or not, because its tone, it's less about like making jokes like a Mel Brooks movie or something than it is, I think, trying to show what it would be like and is like to live in a culture inundated with hate and propaganda like this through the eyes of a child, and through the eyes of a child makes it sort of more whimsical. But Taika Waititi knows what he's doing here. When the movie gets dark, it gets properly dark. Like, it does take the turn you would expect it to take, and it's very good. It's sweet. I think it's very thoughtful. I think it's specific questions it's interested in about how propaganda works on a child and sort of the process of deprogramming from that, and the kind of wrenching aspect of that is really interesting. It's something I can't quite say I've seen before in something like this. It's very well made and well acted. Scarlett Johansson plays his mother, and I think it's one of the best performances she's ever given, and really, really makes me wish Scarlett Johansson would shut up in interviews.
Yeah.
I just shouldn't say shut up, but just like, she's such a great actress, and then she'll talk about how, it's bad that she doesn't get to play trans people or Asian people, and that Woody Allen was framed, and I'm like, please, you're so talented. Just let us live in this bubble where we don't have to think about you defending Woody Allen, Scarlett, because you're really good in this movie. Justin Hammer, what's his name? From Iron Man 2.
Sam Rockwell?
Sam Rockwell is probably deeply offended that I went to Justin Hammer and not any of his other great performances.
I was so taken aback by you trying to refer to Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer that I really wasn't sure what you're talking about for a second. Like,
Sam Rockwell's in the movie. He's great. Lots of great actors. I think that the two kids at the center of the movie are phenomenal. Taika Waititi has proven he's, I think, a really great director of children, which is a significant and difficult skill. So, Jojo Rabbit, I recommend. This next movie, though, was the one that surprised me most, and that is Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel, sort of, to The Shining. And it's a really interesting movie, because, just as a bit of background, so The Shining, the 1980 movie by Stanley Kubrick, has, I think, kind of in popular culture overshadowed the book it's based on, but it's based, obviously, on a also very popular Stephen King book. And then Stephen King never liked the Stanley Kubrick movie. The Stanley Kubrick movie is not so much an adaptation of The Shining than it is kind of a, like, reaction to it. And, like, it goes in very, very different directions. It has a completely different ending, all this stuff. Years later, I think it came out earlier this decade in, like, 2012, Stephen King wrote a sequel called Dr. Sleep, and the book is about an adult Danny Torrance, the kid from the first movie, sort of moving through life and living with his powers and dealing with some of the same issues of alcoholism his father went through. And then they made this movie. And so the movie is kind of adapting 3 or 4 different things, because it is a sequel to the Stanley Kubrick movie, but it is also an adaptation of the Stephen King book, which is a sequel to a continuity that is completely different than the Stanley Kubrick movie. Mm-hmm. And it also adapts pieces of the Stephen King book, The Shining, that are not in the Stanley Kubrick movie, The Shining. So like I said, it's adapting a lot of different things, but ultimately it is its own movie. The director and writer is a guy named Mike Flanagan, who's done a lot of horror stuff recently. He made a really acclaimed Stephen King adaptation for Netflix that I have not seen, but I want to, called Gerald's Game. And so he's been kind of an up-and-coming director of this kind of thing. And I think he's got a really compelling vision for this movie. It is, I think, top to bottom, start to finish, one of the best Hollywood studio movies I've seen in years. It is, I think, the best of the many 80s sequels we've had in recent years, like Blade Runner 2049, Star Wars, Ghostbusters, Terminator, like what have you. These run the gamut from crap to great. I would say Blade Runner 2049 probably being the best of these up till now. I think Dr. Sleep is even better than that. I think it's really, really thoughtful in how it approaches the original material. The final act of the movie takes place at the Overlook Hotel and kind of rebuilds Kubrick's sets, and I think that is a deeply fascinating and thoughtful sort of examination of pop culture memory as this sort of space of trauma and sort of a scarred psyche, and it does that really beautifully. But up to that point, it's often really its own movie, and I think it is at the end as well. But it's a really interesting story. Ewan McGregor plays an adult Danny Torrance, who is an alcoholic to kind of suppress his shining powers. He winds up in this small town on the East Coast, as you do in a Stephen King story. And he joins Alcoholics Anonymous, and he sort of makes this small group of friends, and he starts working in a hospice where he helps old, dying patients sort of transition to the afterlife with his shining powers. He kind of helps calm their mind, and that's how he gets the nickname Dr. Sleep. Meanwhile, there is this group of sort of immortal energy vampires, is the only way I can describe them, who are going around finding children with shining powers and basically feeding on their energy to give them eternal youth. And the head of that group is played by Rebecca Ferguson, the great actress from the recent Mission Impossible movies. She's in Mission Impossible 5 and 6. And she is so fucking good in this movie, Sean. I made the comparison online on Twitter to Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, and I think it's like that good of a this is just an electric villain performance to be watching on screen. It's amazing. And then there is this little girl who is targeted by this group, and she is very powerful with her shining powers and contacts Danny, and Danny decides to help her out, and that's kind of where the plot of the movie goes. But it is just so well made, minute to minute. It is so phenomenally acted. I think it has a really interesting, somewhat Kubrickian, but also its own thing sort of view of horror. I don't find this as scary as The Shining, but I find it more unsettling than a lot of other horror movies, because it is like Kubrick in that it's not jump scares, it's not gore. There's a little bit of gore here and there because this story is just more violent than The Shining. But it is really doing its own thing. I was blown away by this movie start to finish, and I think I'm really sad it has completely bombed at the box office. No one has seen this movie. I haven't met anyone who's seen this movie, but it is so good, and I'm recommending it to everybody, and I would recommend you go see it in a theater. It's a tremendous movie, and I'm so impressed that they pulled this off, because a sequel to The Shining is on paper a bad idea. This movie is great. And I also think it is one of, if not the best Stephen King adaptations post The Shining, because I think it's one of the only Stephen King adaptations to, A, fully embrace the just batshit weirdness of Stephen King at his weirdest, because they fully commit to the energy vampire thing, and it's all I will say is if Mike Flanagan had directed it, we would have gotten Maturin the god turtle that we did not get in the It movies, but is there in the book. They did not do Maturin the turtle. That made me sad. I think Mike Flanagan would have done it because Dr. Sleep is properly fucking weird. And also I think the way he tackles the very Stephen King-esque themes of alcoholism, of generational abuse and neglect and all these things, I think it's done much, much better than in other modern Stephen King adaptations I've seen. And I'm blown away by it. It's a great movie, and people should see it.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like ever since they announced this movie, myself and I imagine a lot of people just kind of wrote it off immediately of there's absolutely no way this is going to be good. This sounds like a terrible idea. And so was never really on my radar until it came out and people started giving it good reviews, because you're not the only person who likes this movie. Most people really, really like it. I'm not going to go out of my way to go to the theater to see it, but I'll try to check it out at some point because it sounds really good. And I love the original Kubrick Shining. I'm not a big fan of the book. I'm not a big fan of Stephen King's writing in general. But I have been fond of various adaptations, so yeah, I'm curious to see it at some point.
Yeah, to me, I'm not a huge King fan either, but I think Stephen King obviously is a talented storyteller with a lot of really compelling ideas, and I think that's why he's been such a rich vein of adaptation, is sometimes you get a good enough filmmaker to kind of grab onto some of those ideas and pull something out of them, not just translate them to the screen. You get something great. Mike Flanagan is playing with King. He's deepening King in a way similar to what Kubrick was doing, which is this is not just a straight adaptation. It's a response. And I think that's really compelling. So awesome. It's great. The other day, I went to see Ford v. Ferrari, which I've been very excited for because I am a basic American male and I like fast cars and sticking it to Europeans. So had to go see Ford v Ferrari. This is the new movie by James Mangold, who made Logan, The Wolverine, 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line. Very, very solid director. This is definitely one of his best movies. It's the true story of in the 60s when the Ford Motor Company was kind of on hard times and decided to kind of boost their image. They wanted to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the most prestigious race in the world at the time, and they hired this guy named Carroll Shelby, played in the movie by Matt Damon, and this racer named Ken Miles, played by Christian Bale, to kind of engineer the car and race in Le Mans to win. And it is, like, if that description sounds like, ooh, I would like to see that movie, this is the movie you think it is. It's very, very good. It's an extremely solid version of what it is. This is the kind of movie where I would recommend, like, watch the trailer, and if those 2 minutes of footage get you, like, jazzed, like, that looks good, 100% you will love this movie. There's, like, no hint of false marketing to that. It is a really, really good, well-characterized, well-acted, well-created, true sports story, and I think it's very smart. It's really well acted, like I said. Matt Damon is great, doing kind of a southern good old boy thing, which I have not really seen Matt Damon do before. But the most fun is Christian Bale, Christian Bale is one of the best actors alive, but I am hard-pressed to say if I've ever seen Christian Bale have fun in a movie. Do you know what I mean, Sean? Mm-hmm. Like, Christian Bale tends to play pretty miserable characters and seems to make himself pretty miserable in playing them. Ford v Ferrari might be the first movie I've seen where I would say Christian Bale is just having fun, in part because Ken Miles was British, so he gets to be British, and Ken Miles was also sort of like country British, and so he is like putting on a big, silly accent and just being flamboyantly British. Like, I don't know if he ever says the words tickety-boo, but it sounds like the kind of character who would go around saying tickety-boo, and it's fantastic. I want a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang remake with Christian Bale as the inventor. That would be hilarious. It's very good. The race scenes are tremendously well done, and like it's a very procedural movie. Like, if you want to see, like, how do they build the car, how do they test the car, what is it like to be a race car driver in these like really intense scenarios where you're doing like 24 hours of racing, all of that, you will be very pleased by all of this. I think it takes it very gracefully takes a darker turn in the last act that is very well done. And I think this is the kind of story that could very easily become a raw American enterprise story, like, yay, Ford, American manufacturing. That's not what the movie is. The movie is very much, I think, about individual and interpersonal exceptionalism, and it is very mistrusting of giant corporations and ultimately has a pretty negative view of Ford in a lot of ways. And so I think it's calibrated in such a way where the story is properly, like, interesting and inspiring without becoming, like, jingoistic or pro-corporation, which I could see this story becoming very quickly. So I really like this movie. Again, this is one of the many movies playing at Thanksgiving that, like, take your family. I can't imagine anyone not liking this movie.
I have to say, Jonathan, I had never heard about this movie since than you tweeting about it when you saw it. I have still not seen anyone talk about this movie. I had no idea this movie existed. I didn't know that it was James Mangold, who I like lots of his movies. I don't know if it was just me or this movie got, like, no marketing. I have seen nothing from this movie.
I saw the trailer for this movie with, like, every movie I've seen for 6 months. I'm amazed you haven't seen the marketing.
Yeah. I haven't gone to a movie I haven't gone to a movie since I started teaching, at the very least.
Yeah, it opened #1 at the box office this weekend. It did $31 million. It's, I think, the biggest Fox performer since the merger.
Yeah, so, I just have not heard anything about it at all. It's just like completely. I just completely missed that this movie got, like, greenlit, that it got made, that it got marketed, and that it got put out. All of those facts did not enter my life.
Well, Sean, I know you and your dad like to go see movies together sometimes. This is like the ultimate dad movie. It's the movie for the dad in our lives and the dad inside of us, even if we're not a literal dad yet. That is the kind of movie this is. It's the kind of movie that if you saw it on, like, TNT or HBO halfway through, you would sit and watch the whole thing. And I know that's an outdated reference because no one watches movies like that anymore. But if you are old enough to know what I'm talking about, you know what kind of movie this is.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
Yeah, you get it. All right. Finally, Sean, holy fucking goddamn shit, I got to see the new Bong Joon-ho movie, Parasite. Bong Joon-ho is the director of The Host, Memories of Murder, Snowpiercer. He's about as good as a director as it gets. His movie Parasite won the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year, came out in South Korea in May, and is finally now out in the United States. It finally came to Iowa City this week. I went to see it yesterday. And Sean, I don't know the last time I was this viscerally blown away by a movie, like chemically buzzed walking out of the theater. It might be Mad Max Fury Road. Would be like the last one I would like make that direct comparison to. Parasite is in fucking sane, and that might be all I say about it, because the best way to see Parasite is knowing absolutely nothing about Parasite. All I had seen was the poster. That was it. I knew nothing about this movie. I knew nothing about the story, and it is one hell of a yarn that starts small and goes some places, and I am feverishly working on my best movies of the decade list, which we will be recording soon, and you'll be hearing in a month or two. And I have to say, Sean, fuck you, Bong Joon-ho. I had my list figured out, and then you put out Parasite a week before we're locking this shit down, and I might have to rethink it. Parasite is that good. It is a masterpiece. Please go see this movie if you live near anywhere where they are showing Parasite. Just if you have ever trusted me on anything, go see this movie and don't look anything up. It is that good.
I definitely am going to go see it. I mean, I don't know if I will be able to see it when it's playing, because it's, it's not an easy movie to just go down to the movie theater right next to you and go watch it kind of thing. I'm going to watch it at some point. I have managed to avoid knowing almost anything about it other than who directed it and what it... I don't even think I've seen the poster. I think I'm less spoiled than you are, so I think we should leave it at that for this, because I don't want to know anything about it until I see it.
One other thing I'll say, this won't be a spoiler or anything. This is also the kind of movie that I would recommend to anyone. It doesn't matter how adventurous you are. I recommended this to my parents after seeing it, and there are very few movies I honestly go out of my way to recommend to my mom, especially if it's in a foreign language, because they don't like reading subtitles that much. I think anyone would enjoy Parasite. It is very tough for me to imagine the kind of person who would not get something out of this movie. So go see it, and that's all we'll say. Sean, you want to do some news?
Yeah, what's going on in the news, Jonathan?
Deep breath. Couple of just fun announcements of upcoming events that are very much within our nerdy wheelhouse, Sean, and I just wanted to tell people in case they missed it, because I almost missed both of these. First up is that for Mobile Suit Gundam's ongoing 40th anniversary celebration, they are putting Char's Counterattack, the first Gundam movie, back in theaters. Well, it's never been in theaters in America. In theaters in America on, oh boy, I didn't put the date on here, but it's early December. I think it's December 4th. I have it on my calendar. Let me look it up here.
I want to say it's 14th.
I think it's earlier than that. It's
it's 12th?
It's the 5th. It's the 5th.
It's 5th, yes. I knew it was a Thursday.
Yes, it's a Thursday. It's Thursday the 5th at 7 p.m. nationwide. It's through Fathom Events, so it'll be in a major theater near you, pretty much wherever you live. And it apparently will be subtitled, so it will be the original Japanese version, they're saying. It'll have an interview with Yoshiyuki Tomino, but most importantly, you will get to see Char's Counterattack on a big screen, which, Sean, we wished for 2 months ago on the podcast. Now we get our wish.
Yeah, I ordered my tickets a month ago.
Yes.
I was well aware of this. My Gundam feelers triggered a while ago. It was I pulled it, okay, yep. I mean, Thursday night is a fucking bummer. God damn it, why couldn't it be a Friday night or a weekend? But, whatever. If I have to be exhausted going into class on Friday because I went to see Char's Counterattack, that is a price I'm willing to pay.
Absolutely. So we have a Weekly Suit Gundam episode about Char's Counterattack that you will be able to listen to after you see the movie. And I'm very excited to go see it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here. But that is very cool that Gundam... I love that they picked that movie. I love that they're doing it. It's very cool.
Yes. Also, Yoshiyuki Tomino was at the New York Anime Convention. I don't remember what the con is called. Some sort of anime convention in New York a couple of days ago, and he had a panel... A panel that was emceed by Austin Walker from Waypoint, which is weird and cool, because he's one of the reasons why I got into Gundam was listening to him talking about it on their podcast. So that was just a weird thing. That's oh, that's cool that he got to meet him. That's fucking amazing. But yeah, so Yoshiki Tomino did a panel, and he talked about a lot of stuff. And it is fascinating listening to interviews with Yoshiki Tomino. So I would recommend people go seek out. There are bunches of Twitter threads and articles and stuff translating and sort of conveying his answers to questions, because he had a lot of like interesting things to say about his relationship with Gundam and anime and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm excited for this. Go get your tickets if you haven't already, because who knows, maybe if this does well, they'll do other Gundam movies in theaters. I want F91. That's what I want.
There was it was not a Fathom event thing, so it was much more limited, so I couldn't go see it, but there was a Gundam F91 thing that played in some theaters, like, I think over the summer. I remember hearing about it on Twitter. So maybe it'll happen to maybe the Fathom will pick up F91, do like a ridiculous, we're going to show all three of the original movie trilogy, like, just to do your bullshit. Fathom, get more Gundam.
All right. We should get that trending. # get more Gundam. All right. Next, I wanted to share this because I think this is really cool. There is a Dragon Ball event that's going to be touring the U.S. next year called Dragon Ball Symphonic Adventure. This is a touring musical performance that has been touring Europe over the last couple of years, and it is a 60-piece orchestra performing orchestral versions of music from the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z soundtracks by Shunsuke Kikuchi, the original and best Dragon Ball composer. And they have as a guest at all these performances Hiroki Takahashi, who performed the original Dragon Ball theme song, Makofushigi Adventure. And that, like I said, has been touring Europe. I've heard good things about it. They are finally bringing it to America in 2020. And luckily for me, it's starting in Chicago in March, and I live about 4 hours from Chicago. So close enough that I will make the trip to go do this. It is on March 27th, 2020. So if you live near Chicago, I almost missed this as well. So I just wanted to put it out there in case Dragon Ball fans are interested. Tickets are, as you would expect for this sort of thing, not as cheap as you would hope. I was able to get a $45 ticket up in like the balcony section, so it wasn't that bad. Of course, Ticketmaster adds exorbitant fees. Fuck you, Ticketmaster. But that's not Dragon Ball's fault. This sounds fun. I've been to this kind of orchestra thing before. My brother and I did one of the Zelda touring symphonies, and that was really cool. And I love the Dragon Ball music so much. This sounds fun, and I am excited to see Hiroki Takahashi maybe do the song. That would be cool. And maybe it'll come to other cities as well. They've only announced Chicago so far. But like I said, I live pretty close to Chicago. So, yeah, I feel like I saw that news, Sean, and I was like, well, Jonathan, you've got an entire bookcase dedicated to Dragon Ball. If you don't do this, you're a poser. So I bought the ticket. I bit the bullet. I'm going to do it.
Cool. Yeah, I had not heard about this at all. That's cool. I have to imagine that when they start playing the Spirit Bomb theme, shit's going to get hype up in that orchestra.
Everybody is going to get up and like put their hands in the air like they're getting the Genki Dama. Yes. And also you should look up the official promo art for this event because it's Goku playing 2 giant taiko drums, and it's a very good. I would love that poster. If they sell that poster at the event, I will buy it. It looks like it's a very good poster. All right. So that's just some fun news. Sean, do you want to do some movie news?
Yep. Let's talk about what's going on with movies.
I'm going to skip this first one unless you have a burning desire because I just don't. I can't today, Sean.
Okay, well, I just want to say, let's do a very quick version of it.
Let me
because
intro
I've
it.
been thinking about it too. Yeah.
Okay. This item on the outline is called, "Okay, you fuckers, let's talk about the Martin Scorsese thing." So, fuckers, Martin Scorsese a couple weeks ago on his press tour for The Irishman, his new movie that looks really good coming out on Netflix, said that he doesn't think Marvel movies are cinema. Prompting a lot of back and forth, and then we thought it died, and then it came back again, and then it died, and then it came back again, and it will never die. And finally, Martin Scorsese wrote a really good op-ed in the New York Times where he laid out what he was trying to say, and he said, I have nothing against the movies themselves, basically, but, to me, they are not the kind of cinema I love, and the kind of cinema I love, and the kind of cinema I want to make isn't getting made anymore because all that gets made are sort of Marvel movies, and the theaters are full of them, and smaller stuff gets squeezed out. Hence me making my newest movie for a streaming TV company, you fuckers, was the subtext of it. And then just people kept misinterpreting that, and then Marvel people came out and said, like, well, why doesn't Scorsese try to fix the problem? And it's like, people, let's just back up a second. Forget every movie Martin Scorsese has ever made. Martin Scorsese has done more for the preservation and access of cinema from around the world, from all voices and all walks of life, than almost any human being alive today. His opinion gets to be right here. I'm sorry. You don't get to argue with Stephen Hawking about physics. You don't get to argue with Martin Scorsese about the conditions of contemporary cinema. He knows what he's fucking talking about, fuckers. And this is coming from someone, me, who likes Marvel movies. So it's okay. Just stop talking about it. That's my 2 cents. Sean, go.
Yeah, I mean, my feelings on it are not particularly different from yours. It is that thing where I think there are lots of people who don't understand that even if Martin Scorsese had never directed a film, he would still be one of the most important people in film history, preservation, and studies alive today. It's like, you know, he's made some of my favorite movies, and he's like one of my favorite directors. Even without that, he's so important. So absolutely, like when he's talking about the conditions in which movies are being made today and the market, and like what is, you know, the monopolistic effect of Disney, especially after the fucking Fox merger. Like, it was bad before the Fox thing. It is getting so much worse where now, you know, they're shutting down like local theater screenings of movies like Alien and stuff like that because Disney is a fucking awful corporation. Like all corporations are awful, but Disney is especially awful because of the amount of power that it currently wields. So when he's talking about that stuff, it's just like people should pay attention. And it's like, and he is working. He's doing more work basically than anybody to try to fix that and make a market that can exist that allows a much broader, more diverse range of movies made from a broader, more diverse range of creators at a broader, more diverse like level of production, so that things don't have to be every movie costs like $200 million fucking dollars to be made and all this shit. And so when he's talking about that stuff, it's just really frustrating for people to get hung up on what was like the dumb one-liner about like Marvel movies aren't cinema or whatever, where like in that is contained, I think, the multitude of what he expressed in that op-ed. I do think that like I wish that Scorsese had never phrased it that way, because it becomes this like what is like a like centuries old, thousands years old thing of like people in the Victorian era saying that novels aren't art in that kind of thing. It's like that kind of phrasing has such a huge history of being wielded in a specific way historically against like marginalized people, that it does like immediately like sort of irk me. Like it like makes the hairs on the back of my neck stick up, and it's like, oh yeah, don't. Like you should never try to make that kind of argument that something doesn't qualify as being a certain level of art or something like that, because history shows that those arguments are bad and are like myopic in many ways. And that's like my feeling on it. It's like that original statement sucks. I mean, he's since basically said that it's like, well, that's just like, I don't really like them. And that was his way of basically saying, I don't like those movies that much. And that's fine. And it was just like that original phrasing was poor. And I feel like everyone's gotten so hung up on that shit. It's like the Marvel movies are art. They're cinema, like any movie. Like there's no actual definition or distinction between movie and cinema. Anyone who tries to construct a hard distinction between those two things, that distinction will be porous and fall down, and it'll be maybe useful for you as an individual, but it's not useful for the art form. Don't try to make those kinds of distinctions. It's never worked well. But the state of filmmaking in America and film screening in America is in the complete shitter. It's been going down the shitter for decades. It's the reason why I don't go see most movies at theaters, is because just theatrical screenings are awful most of the time. And now, like, the only kinds of movies I see at the movie theater is Marvel movies, because sometimes it's the only movies, like Parasite's not at a movie theater that's convenient for me to go see, so I can't go see that. So it's like, I will go see the next Marvel movie because I like those movies, you know, and I'll go out of my way to go see those in the theater. But oftentimes the other kinds of movies that I maybe would like don't always just come to the theater near me, and it's really frustrating. So yeah, that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, I think on the very narrow "are Marvel movies cinema" thing, he's wrong. It's stupid. Don't say it. But that is like that's like the very tip of the iceberg, and then there's all this substance underneath. And, like, that's what we should focus on. And let me just put it plainly here. You know, I went to see Parasite yesterday, and before Parasite, they showed the trailer for The Irishman. And The Irishman can only be shown in certain indie art house theaters. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching that trailer, and I'm thinking, if this were 10 years ago, The Irishman would be one of the biggest, like, non-franchise hits of the year. And it would be up for, like, 12 Academy Awards. Like, that's what it looks like. If this were 20 years ago, it would just be one of the biggest hits of the year. If it was 30 years ago, it probably just straight up would be the biggest moneymaker of the year. Like, Martin Scorsese has kind of watched his career go in such a way where, like, the kinds of movies he makes are, like, the big attention-getting thing to a big attention-getting thing to more of a niche but attention-getting thing to now there are no spaces in movie theaters to show his thoughtful adult drama because they're all showing Disney movies, whether that's Marvel or what have you. It's mostly Disney right now. And The Irishman either gets to play on televisions or in very limited indie theaters that not everyone has access to. And God bless local indie theaters. They're the future of cinema. I strongly believe that. Support your nonprofit theater. That's all you're going to have soon. But, like, for Martin Scorsese, I get why he's fucking frustrated. I get it, you know? Like, this dude, yeah. I mean, think about it this way, Sean. The Wolf of Wall Street was 2013. That movie made, like, $300 million. It was this huge hit for, like, what it was. And 5 years later, he can't get a movie made by a studio, and he has to go to Netflix. Like, how frustrating must that be? And I'm not trying to, like, cry tears for Martin Scorsese. Obviously, he is a pretty privileged filmmaker as these things go. But he's also a serious artist who seriously cares about the business he's in. And, you know, if someone like that is calling fire, I would listen to him. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, but if Martin Scorsese, the dude who made fucking Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street, if that dude can't get his movie in like broad theatrical release and he has to go to Netflix, like how many other like great directors are we missing out on that can't get their movies shown to wider audiences like that? Like it's Martin Scorsese and he's in that situation, and it is just getting worse, right? Like it is like we're only starting to feel the impacts of the Disney Fox merger. Like we're at the very beginning stages of that, and if Congress doesn't do something and pass a law, and to do something to try to break up like the like mega corporations that we're like seeing being built right now, like it's only going to get worse, and Disney's going to swallow up something else next, you know, and it's really infuriating.
You know, David Lynch has not had a theatrical movie made since 2006. Terrence Malick has not had a movie funded by an American company, I think since maybe 2011 or 2004. I forget who funded The Tree of Life, but like all of his 2010s work was basically French and European funded. Just you can go down the lists of like great artists from the 70s, from like the generation that rebirthed American cinema and are still active and working, but are either sidelined completely, on the margins, or having to go to very unconventional means of getting their stuff made. And I do find that kind of sad, because it also, again, if they're having trouble, imagine if you're an up-and-comer. That's all I can say about that. You know? Yeah. All right. You want to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog?
Yeah, like, instead of us talking about how movies are getting worse, let's talk about how one movie clearly has gotten fucking better. It's not going to be good, but it's going to be better than what it would have been.
So Sonic the Hedgehog, let's do the quick recap, Sean. There's this new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, a live-action kind of buddy comedy starring James Marsden and Jim Carrey. Earlier this year, we got a trailer with a Sonic the Hedgehog design that was just pure and clean nightmare fuel that looked nothing like Sonic the Hedgehog. The movie also looked bad, but it was almost hard to talk about how the movie looked bad because the Sonic was so horrifying. So they said, okay, we're going to redesign Sonic, and they pushed the movie to Valentine's Day 2020, February 14th. And now, this week, we finally got the new trailer, which shot right to the top of YouTube's trending page. It was like a very highly viewed trailer because we were all fascinated, and they did it. Sonic looks fucking great. Yep.
It's a really good, like, it is as good as you could imagine a Hollywood 3D CG Sonic looking. Like, it is, like, that's fucking Sonic the Hedgehog. He looks good. That's Sonic. Look at him run. He's joking around. He's having a fun time. This is fucking Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, he looks great. He looks good in the environments. Like, everything about, like, it's night and day. Like, kudos to every artist who worked on it. It's incredible. It's a really good-looking Sonic. I also want to say, Sean, like, how much do you want to bet that exact design was pitched, like, 3 years ago? and rejected by the studio.
Yeah, like, I'm sure that there's, like, as soon as, like, the call came, it was like, the internet is freaking out, like, we're getting death threats, we have to change the Sonic the Hedgehog, we have to change it now, and then, yeah, like, the lead, like, CG artist at the effects studio just, like, opens up a drawer, is like, takes out, like, a hard drive or something, it's like, well, here we go, here's the thing we were doing, like, a year ago, that you guys fucking scrapped and said we had to make this monster, so let's just reboot this hard drive up and start working on it again.
It's a hard drive where someone has written in Sharpie on it, "Good Sonic."
Yes, this is the good Sonic hard drive. Take out the bad Sonic hard drive, put in the good one.
Yes. The movie itself, though, Sean, honestly, I thought this trailer was even worse than the first one, in terms of, like, everything around Sonic. Boy, it looks bad.
I mean, they didn't have Gangsta's Paradise play. They traded out Gangsta's Paradise for Blitzkrieg Bop, which is an objectively much better song for Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, I think I honestly prefer the second trailer. Like, regardless of the Sonic the Hedgehog situation, I'm not saying that I think the movie's going to be good. I'm not going to go see the movie, but I think I enjoyed the second trailer's construction more than the first's.
I think Blitzkrieg Bop is one of those songs that if I could go back in time and kill the people who made it at birth, I would.
You'd go kill the Ramones?
I fucking hate Blitzkrieg Bop. It is one of my most hated songs. It is so ludicrously overused. When Spider-Man Homecoming did it at the end, I think I audibly groaned. I hate that song. That song can go die in a hole. It fits better for Sonic. Fuck that song. I hate it.
So, Jonathan, I think we've now arrived at why you really don't like this trailer compared to the first one.
Yeah, no, it is. Okay, take that out. It's also like there was less annoying Jim Carrey, but there was more dense annoying Jim Carrey. Like, 20 seconds of this trailer is just him screaming into the camera nonsense gibberish. Like, I don't think Jim Carrey was directed in this movie, Sean. I think they just said, "Go, Jim Carrey, fly," and Jim Carrey's version of fly is there. That's my Jim Carrey impression. Jim Carrey's also an anti-vaxxer. Fuck Jim Carrey.
Yeah, no, fuck Jim Carrey. Like, I will say, the first... Do you remember the gag the first trailer ended on, which was like Sonic the Hedgehog was in a bag that James Marsden was holding?
Dumb. Yeah.
And, like... This trailer's, like, version of that gag is, like, Sonic runs and gets rubber balls because he wanted to see the giant rubber ball band.
That gag was okay. Yeah,
right,
okay.
like this trailer has, like, two gags, like Sonic sliding over the hood of the car and getting in the seat. And he's like, that was awesome. And I'm like, yeah. Like, there are moments in this trailer where I, like, almost, like... I didn't crack a smile, but I thought about cracking a smile, and that's so far above and beyond what the first trailer managed to elicit from me.
You know what did make me crack a smile? The first 10 seconds of the trailer is Sonic running around like Green Hill Zone, and it looks so good! Why can't we have that movie? Why can't we have a movie that's like cool, realistic CGI environments of the game, and you could make a Tails character and stuff like that? And... like, why do we have to do it as, like, the Smurfs movie with annoying people doing annoying things? It looks so bad. They fixed Sonic. Good on them. It looks awful. Also, the guy who is playing Sonic...
Ben Schwartz?
Yeah, Ben Schwartz. I like him a lot. He was clearly directed to do a Ryan Reynolds impression. He is so clearly doing Ryan Reynolds' Detective Pikachu. It's eerie, and it's like, I would bet everything I have that they tried to get Ryan Reynolds to play Sonic. They couldn't get him to do it, and so they got Ben Schwartz, because it sounds so much like they are trying to do a Detective Pikachu thing.
Yeah. But for the real thing about this trailer, for me, Jonathan, was after watching it the first time, I then saw a side-by-side of the new Sonic and the old Sonic, and I have to say, seeing like a good-looking CG Sonic makes the old one all the more inexplicable. It's like I had this moment of just like, what the fuck happened? How did that thing ever happen? Because there are things about the new Sonic that I hadn't realized were so drastically different from the old one. Like the legs and arms I had forgotten were so human in the old Sonic. Like he's got like realistic looking calf and thigh muscles. It's like, what the fuck did they do? what the fuck happened for that first one? Because because also the new one has big cartoonish eyes that are really expressive, and the old one is just these dead, glassy fish eyes. It's like, how did this ever occur? How did a human being ever allow this to happen? Because it's so fucking horrifyingly awful. And I had, not seen it for so long, and having, here's a competent, studio-made version of this next to the old one, it is truly baffling to me that was something that ever occurred. Even for Hollywood, it is beyond the pale that is a design that went through, all the way to, then putting the trailer out.
It really is amazing. And I think I saw some narrativizing online this week of, fans bullied the studio into doing this, and look at all those artists who had to work overtime. And, yes, I do feel bad for the artists who had to work overtime, but the fault of that lies squarely at the feet of the studio. Because in my memory, Sean, no one was bullying the Sonic people when that trailer came out. We were all laughing about how bad it was. My guess is that everyone involved in actually making that fucking movie knew how bad it was, and they basically took all those notes from Twitter, brought it to some CEO at the company, and was like, we told you, we fucking told you, and he was finally like, okay, fix it. But to me, the fault on that goes squarely to, the movie and the studio, not fans who rightfully made fun of something that looked stupid. It looked stupid. They fixed it. I do feel bad if people were overworked. I hope the conditions were good, but, that's the company's fault for fucking up and making a bad movie.
Yeah, and then it's the company's fault for if and I'm assuming probably they were overworked, because they would have been overworked had the movie come out at its original time or not. And I imagine this probably did make it worse. But that is also still the company's fault. It's their fault for the policies that caused that overwork and them not pushing the movie back further, and all kinds of the labor practices. We talk about labor practices in the video game industry a lot on this podcast. The labor practices in the movie VFX industry are just as bad, if not worse. So that I think it's weird to blame the fan backlash for that, because also the fans have no capacity to make those conditions better. The studios have the capacity to make those conditions better. I think we have the right to mock what again is not just a bad Sonic the Hedgehog design, what is an utterly baffling, incomprehensible, horrifying fucking nightmare that they put together. Because it is if you haven't seen it in a while, look up some images, because it is so crazy. I know people focused on the teeth, and the teeth are awful, but the teeth are just the tip of the fucking bad Sonic the Hedgehog iceberg, because the whole thing is just atrocious. The one thing I really wish they had done is, I wish they had both, had their new movie trailer. I wish they had put out the exact same trailer as last time, just with the new Sonic, so you could have the one-to-one comparison. Just to see, because there are a couple of shots that are shared. Mostly it's the one of him screaming. Which also gives a good comparison, because you see just how lifeless the old Sonic was, that clearly its rig was not designed for cartoonish facial expressions, which is a funny thing to do in your movie without a cartoon hedgehog, to not give him cartoonish facial expressions to sell your dumb joke. But you have a couple of shots you can do side by side, but I wanted the full tableau of everything with old Sonic, new Sonic, just to get the whole thing out there for us.
Well, once the movie's out, I'm sure someone will cut together the exact trailer comparison to the original.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Just to, I need it for closure or something, just to put the whole thing to rest.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about a movie that increasingly seems like it's going to be something special, which is The Batman, the new Batman movie made by Matt Reeves over at Warner Brothers. There's a bunch of casting that came out in the last couple weeks. So we already knew that Robert Pattinson was going to be Batman, Zoe Kravitz would be Catwoman, and Paul Dano would be the Riddler. We have now learned that they have cast Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon. You'll know Jeffrey Wright from a bunch of things, including Westworld, and he's Felix Leiter in the James Bond movies. They have cast Andy motherfucking Serkis as Alfred the Butler. Andy Serkis as Alfred. That's so good. Colin Farrell is in talks to play the Penguin, which A+ out of left field casting on that one. And they have also cast a newcomer named Jamie Lawson to play a mysterious character named Bella, a grassroots political candidate running for office in Gotham, which means Robert Pattinson will again be playing opposite a woman named Bella. There's already speculation this character is actually Batgirl. In any case, you've got all of that. Michael Giacchino is going to be doing the score, which I think is cool. And Greig Fraser is the DP. Greig Fraser shot Rogue One. He shot Zero Dark 30. He actually shot The Mandalorian as well on Disney+. So really good DP. I don't know, Sean. All signs point to yes on this one. That is a phenomenal cast lineup. And my favorite thing about every one of those pieces of casting is that you see the actor and you go, huh, because it's not who you would have thought of. And then you think about it and go, oh. And then you go, that's really good casting. And that's the best kind of casting.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Andy Serkis's performance capture as the CG Alfred, because I imagine that's why you cast him, right? They're going to turn Alfred into like a fish man or something and get Andy Serkis in there.
What if they do Alfred like the AI in Iron Man, like Paul Bettany did? What's his name?
Vision and Jarvis.
Yeah, Jarvis. And now Alfred is like Jarvis. What if they did that?
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, there's just like a weird like AI construct that pops up sometimes that is performance capture Andy Serkis.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, this casting, every piece of casting is so interesting. And it is the exact thing of, like, it's Jeffrey Wright. And, like, I wasn't a huge fan of Season 1 of Westworld, which is all I've seen of Westworld. But he is really fucking good in Westworld. And getting that is like, oh, yeah, I can see... Like, I can both see why you'd cast him as Gordon. It's not the actor I would ever think of, but I can kind of see why you'd cast him. And I would also, like, see... like with the direction he could take that character in, which is, and that's true of all these actors they've cast. Like Colin Farrell as the Penguin, fucking every time I think about it, it's just like, oh my god, that is so. I can't wait to see what he does it's such a cool piece of casting.
Because here it is. Because like Jeffrey Wright is one of those guys who elevates everything he's ever been in. He is just the consummate, phenomenal character actor.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
He's perfect for this. But Colin Farrell, I love the idea of, like, who are we going to get to be Penguin? Let's get one of the most famously handsome men on the planet, Colin Farrell, and have him be Penguin. That's brilliant. That's fucking brilliant. Because Colin Farrell has what you want there, which is one of the most handsome men on the planet, and also he's a fucking weirdo in movies, and he can be a really good fucking weirdo. And you put those together, and I think that sounds like a Penguin who won't be like Burgess Meredith or Danny DeVito or any of the other Penguins we've had. That's, like, very, very exciting to me.
Yeah, so I'm getting more and more excited about this movie. It just seems like it's going to be a very different take on at least a movie version of Batman, because we have had so many fucking movie Batmans at this point that we desperately need something to go in a very different direction, and this seems like that's what it's going to be. So
it also feels like, although we haven't had any confirmation of this yet, it really feels like we're heading towards we're going to get some version of the Bat family in this, you know? I would be very surprised if this movie has no nods to Robin or Batgirl or something in there, because if Batman's going to be taking on a whole army of villains, he's going to need a friend.
Yeah, exactly. Or at the very least, like, if they're not in this movie, there's like a nod to them like setting that up for a sequel or something. Because that is like that one like massive area of Batman that is just almost completely unexplored in the movies. The only ones that really do it is like Batman and Robin.
The Joel Schumacher too, Batman Forever also.
Yeah, Batman. Yeah, I forgot Batman. He's in Batman Forever also. So yeah, so you get a little bit in the Joel Schumacher ones, but other than that, like it's just for something that is has been a massive factor in every piece of Batman media since the 40s, because Robin was introduced in Batman super early on. It's a weirdly unexplored part of the movies because they're like the Arkham games have a bunch of stuff with Robin and Nightwing and stuff. So. I'm excited to see where this movie goes. I'm also just like, it's been something we've known for a while. Obviously because since the movie was announced, but let's not forget like the original bit of awesome casting, which was Robert Pattinson as Batman, which is the best piece of casting so far.
Yes.
That I just really want to see a trailer just so we get a sampling of what this stuff is going to look like, because I think it's going to be good.
The best thing is that we're going to get years of very weird Robert Pattinson interviews. Have you seen some of his recent press tour stuff for I forget what movie he's even doing right now, but he's just been asked questions. My favorite one was this long answer he gave about how he really wanted to play a ballerina, do a ballet movie, and his agent was like, do you do ballet? And he's like, I've never done ballet, that's why I want to do a ballet movie. And his agent couldn't get him a ballet movie, and he was really sad, and he wants to do a ballet movie. And I'm thinking, Matt Reeves, you could very easily do Batman doing ballet. Just Scarecrow night gasses him and he's on stage. I mean, that's very easy, guys.
It's part of his ninja training, you know? He's just, like, steps softly. I love that. That's like when Tom Cruise says, like, I want to learn how to fly a helicopter, so we're going to do a big helicopter thing in Mission Impossible 6. And Robert Pattinson's version of that is, I want to learn how to do ballet, so can you get me a movie where I play a ballet dancer?
Oh, I love it. I just love that whole outlook on life, which is like, I'm looking for roles that challenge me, but, you know, he's like a millennial, you know, Gen Zer type, so it's not like really like hyper masculine, like, you know, old 80s types of challenges. It's like, no, I want to learn to dance.
Yeah, it's like, I just really want to learn how to write, like, ancient haiku. Can we get, like, a thing where it's, like, a dude who, like, learns how to write haikus really well or something? Because, man, it seems like that'd be fun. I just don't have the time for it.
I want to make a movie about calligraphy, goddammit.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on. Sean, you want to do some gaming news?
Yeah, because there was a surprising amount. Because this XO19 event was not really on my radar until a couple of days earlier, where it seemed like there's news got out that, oh shit, they're going to announce shit at this thing. It's not just going to be another just random event where nothing comes out, which it feels like both Sony and Microsoft do every now and then. And we just got a lot of announcements all of a sudden.
Yeah, so this was the Microsoft XO19 event. Let's go through a couple of these. This isn't everything they showed off, but it was everything I found interesting. Obsidian, which is now part of Microsoft, has a new game called Grounded that will be in early access on Xbox this spring. It basically looks like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the game. A bunch of kids get shrunk. You're in a yard. Everything's big. Sounds like a cool idea. This is, I think, the first time Microsoft has done early access on a first-party game, so that's kind of interesting. Because they have that Xbox preview program, but they usually do it for other people's stuff, like PUBG or We Happy Few. Like, they wound up buying that studio, but that was after it was in Xbox preview, so yeah, but now they've got for one of their own games, and this is the first thing Obsidian is making for them.
Yeah. Jonathan, what does it say that when you said, oh, like Microsoft has never done early access for one of their first-party games, and I almost immediately said Sea of Thieves before I realized that Sea of Thieves did not come out on Game Preview program.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, they effectively have. The Master Chief Collection apparently isn't being finished until this December, but yeah.
Yeah. But on this Obsidian game, so for people who forgot or don't remember, like Obsidian is the studio that just put out The Outer Worlds, which I talked about at the top of this show. And so this is kind of a weird game for them to be making, just because, as far as I know, Obsidian has only ever made RPGs. Like you know, some are like really hardcore RPGs, some are more action RPGs, like KOTOR 2 or Alpha Protocol. But like they are an RPG studio, and Grounded is very much not an RPG. Like it seems like it's a like multiplayer survival kind of game. So I'm really curious how that turns out. Like it's cool that the studio is branching out and trying something very different. Like that usually seems to be very healthy for studios, especially after just how kind of like, you know, even though I enjoyed a lot of it, like stayed in placid. The Outer Worlds feels as a video game that is just so a game from like 2011 to 2012 that then maybe like shaking it up with doing a totally different genre. And, you know, Grounded certainly doesn't seem like a game that I'm personally interested in, but I'm curious to see what kind of effect that will have on the studio going forward when they go back to making games that are more what they're known for.
It feels like Microsoft asked Obsidian, like, you know, I know you're putting out this Outer Worlds game, but like, could you make us something small and like immediate and almost like tech demo-y just to like show off what you can do? And it feels like that's what Grounded is. So it feels like kind of their first salvo as a Microsoft studio, and it's something they'll probably build on more than it'll be its own like big living thing. But I think it's a cool experiment, and it shows the kind of thing, hopefully, that Microsoft's can do with some first parties is let them just experiment and play around, which is something PlayStation lets their people do, and it works to good effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then we've got Don't Nod was there. They're the creators of Life is Strange, and they are creating a 3-episode game, so episodic like Life is Strange, and it's called Tell Me Why, starring a transgender male protagonist. They are working with GLAD for what they want to be a quote, authentic experience, although no trans people appear to be working on the game itself. On the game's staff, at least, it's more like in an advisory capacity. But I think, from what I could gather, I think the reaction to this seemed sort of like cautiously positive.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Of one thing I just want to like get out of the way because I was just thinking about it, and it's not really relevant. I think the more interesting discussion. But one thing that Don't Nod did also say is that all 3 of the episodes are going to release over the course of summer 2020, which is finally one of these episodic games has figured out that one of the biggest barriers for most people to playing these episodic games is that it takes like 3 to 5 months between episodes, and you never know when one episode is done when the next one's going to come out. So they're just saying, oh, we're getting them ready in a state that we will be able to put them out over the course of like a 3 to 4 month period. That is smart. I'm glad that one of these studios is finally doing that for these fucking games. As far as like the trans representation thing, people should read Patrick Klepek's article on Waypoint/Vice Games, whatever their branding is these days, because he's the one who interviewed them and kind of broke the story that it's all like advisory stuff. They said like basically they have trans people who are part of like the playtesting team. So they get feedback that way. They're working with people from GLAAD, which already like the sort of queer community, trans community, their relationship with GLAAD is not just like, yeah, it's more complicated than that. So I think the thing that's frustrating, and obviously like we're both cis dudes, so there's only so much we can say about this, but it is this immediate thing of like, I think we need to be out of the space where it's, oh, we're telling... Like, by we're, I mean, like, you and me, Jonathan, like, or and us, like cis people or straight people telling trans stories or queer stories, or, like, white people telling black stories, right? And, like, telling stories of people that come from very different backgrounds from ourselves and trying to pass that off as, like, it's, like, diverse representation, technically, but without, like, diverse creators actually creating that representation. And I think we need to get to the place where, like, that's not what we mean when we're talking about representation. We need to get to the place where it's like, I'm not saying that cis people can't be working on the game, or that they can't be, like, the director of the game, or that a cis person can't be on the writing team. Like, but to basically, like, have them say, as far as we know, no trans people are actually developing the game. That's basically what they told Patrick Klepek. And certainly it's not like the main writing team. There's no trans person on that. And it's just like, why not? Like, why would you make this game without going and hiring a trans writer or a trans game creator? It's not like there's not hundreds of them, if not thousands, of like well-known, well-regarded trans creators in the game community who make small indie projects all the time. Like, I follow like a dozen or so on Twitter, you know? Like, it's not like you can't go find someone to hire that's working on small projects that you could bring into the studio at least to work on this game. And it's just really frustrating that this is the best that it gets, basically. Still is like cis straight white people telling these stories, which is the same thing it was for Life is Strange. Like, Life is Strange got largely popular in the queer community because like one of the pathways you could play that game through, the original season 1, was to have the main character, whose name I'm forgetting, but the main character enter a queer relationship with her best friend. And like that game was like, you could also enter a straight relationship with a male character in that game. So it wasn't like just like, here's this like queer story. But it was one of the options in a time when that is not an option you usually had. And so that community did latch onto that, but it does over time. It's very clear, like it's like straight people were making that game and telling that story, and it's straight dudes mostly, not even women. So that's just like the thing that I've been thinking about a lot since then. Like, I don't want this to be a like, you can't make this game, because it is probably still better than nothing. That like the progress of hopefully this then opens doors in the future for more authentic representation, I feel like we could have that progress now. I feel like it shouldn't be that big of a step. And so it is very frustrating to me.
Here's an allegory I'll give you, Sean. There's a great podcast that I've probably referenced here before called You Must Remember This. It's hosted by a scholar and a film critic named Karina Longworth, who the show basically explores sort of unknown or underrepresented Hollywood history, and she does all these different series on things like the Blacklist or the Charles Manson era in Hollywood and things like that. Her current series, which I would highly recommend people listen to, is about Song of the South, the infamous Disney movie that is notably not on Disney+.
Yes.
And one of the recent episodes, she talked about the writing process of Song of the South. And if you don't know, Song of the South is a movie. The main character is a little white boy, but it has the sort of main figure in the movie is Uncle Remus, played by James Baskett, who is a former slave on this plantation. And it's got a lot of black characters in it who are slaves or former slaves. And nobody at Disney set out to make a racist movie. They didn't sit down, and Walt Disney didn't chomp a cigar and go, how can we stick it to all the black audiences in America? That wasn't the goal. They actually thought they were maybe making something kind of cool and hopefully crossing some lines and that sort of thing, right? I don't think Walt Disney would have used the word progressive because that's not who he was. But, they didn't think they were making something regressive. So Walt Disney, when they were writing the script, brought on a number of advisors and people who he thought could help make it more of the time, including one white writer who was a card-carrying communist, which Walt Disney just, was not a fan of, let's say, if you know the history of Walt Disney and communists. But he hired this guy and had him do a pass and did not take on a lot of his feedback, but he showed it to him, he showed it to some other people. What Walt Disney never did, and what he never considered doing, as far as we know, and what no studio executive in Hollywood in the 1940s would have ever considered doing, as far as we know and as history has shown, is actually say, what if we hired a black person to write Song of the South? What if we took Song of the South and hired a black writer to write this movie and have it be their POV on it? That did not, as far as we know, occur to them, and Karina Longworth goes through this. That would have been the actual transgressive thing to do. I think that is fully analogous to where the industry is right now on LGBTQ content.
Yeah.
And I think in some areas it's better than others. There is certainly more, I would say, gay and lesbian and bisexual representation behind the scenes of some movie projects, not nearly enough. But, oh my God, when you get to trans people, it's just a crapshoot. We're barely getting to the point where they actually let trans people play trans people.
Yeah.
Which I think is analogous to the blackface era of Hollywood, where you wouldn't let black people on screen, so if you had a black character, you would just slap a white person in blackface. There's not a huge difference in that with a cisgendered person playing a trans person. So we finally sometimes let trans people play trans people. What we don't do is let trans people behind the scenes write, direct, shoot, whatever you want to do. And so I feel like this is very analogous to that Walt Disney example. And that's not me saying that Don't Nod's game will be as thuddingly wrong as Song of the South was to race relations, but it's similarly problematic when the least you could do is not advisory roles. The least you could do is hire a writer.
Yeah.
That's the least you could do. They're doing below the least you could do. And so when I say cautiously positive, I think people are happy that there is because there has never been a game of this stature with a trans male protagonist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's cool. I think a lot of people like that, but then it's you couldn't hire a trans writer. Let alone, let's say you didn't want to find someone with game design experience, which there are plenty of those people, obviously, but there's obviously even more people who are trans people who can write. Writing is not a specialized skill for, it's writing. So this is crazy. Yeah. So I think the Song of the South example, I thought of that as you were talking, and I think it's that is the kind of moment we're in right now.
Yeah. And another a very recent example of something that does something like this but does it the right way is actually The Outer Worlds. Parvati, the character I talked about at the beginning briefly, she's the best companion character. She's the most interesting. Her whole quest line in the game, with her basically, if you think of Mass Effect 2, her loyalty mission kind of thing, is she has this massive crush on this other character you meet named Junlei, who's a woman, and basically she wants to go on a date with Junlei, and you do all this stuff to kind of help set up the perfect date. It's a really good quest line. It feels very unique amidst the other kind of story content in that game, which is one of the reasons why it shines really bright, is because it stands out so much amongst the rest of that game. But also, Parvati is ace or asexual, and that's a perspective that most games just I don't think I've ever seen a game have an ace character. Certainly not a big budget game like Outer Worlds, or at least relatively big budget compared to something indie. And also Patrick Klepek, who's just done put out some really fucking amazing stuff at Vice Games over the past month. If you have not been following him on Twitter, you should follow him, because his WoW thing with WoW Classic was also great. And he also had a big interview with the writer of Parvati, who the main writer for that character is an ace woman. And so she channeled a lot of her own personal experiences and feelings into Parvati and in creating this character. Also voiced really, really fantastically by Ashley Birch, who's just one of the best up and coming video game voice actresses. She's in so much great stuff now. She's also the main character in Horizon Zero Dawn. But I think one of the main reasons why everybody responds so positively to Parvati is especially the LGBTQ community and the asexual community respond really positively to her, because it feels like authentic representation, because it is authentic representation for a community that is all completely ignored, even by sections of the queer community, is often ignored. But then it also there's an authenticity to the character that I think expresses itself to people who are completely ignorant to that and don't care about representation or have no stake in that kind of game. The character comes across as authentic and honest, and that's something that no matter who you are, it communicates something to you about the truth of this character. And she's the best written character in that game, and I think part of it comes from that, is how real she feels. So if you're trying to make a game like that and you are a straight cis white dude, hire some people that are from the community that you're trying to write a story to represent. Again, I'm not saying that you can't be a part of that project, but it's not your story. You should involve the people from that community and not in an advisory role, in a creative capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're just, I think by the year 2019, we could say if a white writer wants to write a story about a black family or something, that's not the most problematic thing in the world, because that's not completely unusual and closed off the possibilities, right? Mm-hmm. But I do think there's so few opportunities to work with trans people in games whatsoever that, I think at this point in history, I don't know if I really care what cis people have to say about the transgender experience, because they haven't lived it, Mm-hmm. And it's not, we don't live in a fully integrated, unified society on that front. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to much sillier things. Rare announced their new game earlier than I thought we would see a new thing from Rare, and it is called Everwild. It's a very colorful, sort of got Breath of the Wild-esque graphics, kind of even pushing further into the sort of cel-shading, cartoony graphics. Looks like an open-world sort of exploration game out in nature. It's got a co-op component like Sea of Thieves. We don't know much else about it, but Rare's working on it, and I'm glad Rare is kind of thriving over there at Microsoft, because we thought they were dead for a while.
Yeah, it's the trailer doesn't really kind of communicate much about what the actual game is, but it is very good looking. I'm guessing that it's going to be a while till we see this game actually come out, especially if you think about how many times they showed Sea of Thieves before Sea of Thieves came out. That I'm guessing we're this is probably going to be a 2021, 2022 kind of game.
It's an Xbox 2 game. It's definitely an Xbox 2 game.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe there will be... I mean, everything will be backwards compatible, so what's the point? But maybe there will be, here's our Xbox One version that you can also put out, or whatever. But, yes, it is clearly going to be far enough away. It'll be a next-gen game. But it's got a very good aesthetic. It almost feels like cutesy Annihilation... where Annihilation had all these weird animals with the fungus stuff and all that. The animal designs are just offbeat enough, but it's not menacing in any way. But the way the antlers on their weird deer have these big unfurling fungi mushroom looking things to them. I'm really into the artistic aesthetic, even if I have no idea what the actual game is going to be.
Absolutely. You'll like this, Sean.
Yes.
Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami 1, and Yakuza Kiwami 2 are all being ported to Xbox One. They're all coming to Xbox Game Pass, and they're all coming in 2020. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time Yakuza has left the PlayStation playground.
Yes, absolutely. It is, Yakuza is one of those games that has just been one of those weird soft exclusives that Sony gets, because the Xbox doesn't sell anything in Japan, and it's not like a Nintendo friendly kind of game. Like, you could put Yakuza on Nintendo consoles. It would be cool if they did, but it doesn't immediately jump out at you as a Nintendo branded kind of game. So it's sort of one of those. It's well, Sony is just the nicest home for it. There's no deal, as far as I know. There's never been a deal between Sony and Sega on Yakuza. It just has always kind of worked out that way. So if you have not checked out Yakuza, it's very good. If people are confused about where to start and you only have an Xbox and you want to start playing these games, you want to play Yakuza 0 first. Because while Kiwami is a remake of the first Yakuza game, it inserts a lot of stuff that sort of calls back to the prequel they made of Yakuza 0. So you should start with Yakuza 0, then play Kiwami 2, and then hopefully this means that then the remastered versions of 3, 4, and 5 that are coming out will eventually come to Xbox, and then ideally 6 in Judgment and stuff like that. Because if more people get to play those games, awesome. Yakuza 0... some might say is one of the best games of the past 10 years. Who knows?
We'll find out, Sean. We'll find out. I also want to mention the Xbox Game Pass thing because Microsoft is going really hard on this.
Yeah.
And the other big signal of that, and I forgot to put this on the outline, Sean, but they also announced that all the Final Fantasies that are on Xbox are going to Game Pass. Mm-hmm. So that means Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, 10-2, 12, all of which are the new versions for Xbox One, and then the Xbox 360 versions, which are backwards compatible, of 13, 13.2, and 13.3. So every Final Fantasy game that plays on an Xbox will be on Xbox Game Pass. That is huge, and they also Phil Spencer was asked about this. He says they're working on Final Fantasy 14. He says they really want 14 on Xbox. He says Square Enix they're looking at it, and they want to figure it out. They say the big thing is he wants to make sure it's, cross-compatible with everything else. So, and then he says he also wants it in Game Pass. So, I think their goal very clearly is that the vast majority of things that will be on Xbox will be on Game Pass, and I think they want every Xbox owner to own Game Pass, and I don't know if that is viable in the long run because that is a huge, huge shift in the financial model of gaming. But it is very clearly a place Xbox is planting their flag. And I think for a while, Game Pass has felt like a cool experiment. I think it is, at this point, Sean, kind of unthinkable to be using the Xbox without it. And clearly it's going to be one of the bedrocks of the Xbox too. And could be, if it works, a sea change in the industry. I would be keeping an eye on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Over the summer when I had access to my parents' Xbox because they were on that trip, that was what I did. Is I bought the month for $1 or whatever after E3 of Xbox Game Pass, and I played Outer Wilds. I played a little bit of Forza Horizon 4, whichever one it was. And kind of just played around with Xbox games, and it is a cool service. I'm like you I'm very curious to see what the ultimate impact of that's going to be. It's something where this and then the Apple, whatever the Apple one is called that they did for iPhone
Apple
games.
Arcade.
Yeah, Apple Arcade. I'm curious to see what the impact of that is going to be in terms of how games are manufactured, and manufactured in terms of how they're created. Because if this model becomes sort of self-sustaining, it's going to then have massive impacts on the way that games are designed. I'm curious to see if it's going to get to that point, or if eventually these kinds of services are going to collapse under themselves because game development is not like TV and movie development. It is more arduous in many, many ways. And so I'm curious to see if that is going to ultimately be sustainable once it's not a thing where it's we're just making games the way we've always been making them, and they're just going into this Game Pass service. That's fine. And then it's Game Pass has been a thing for several years, and you're making games. Games have started pre-production after Game Pass has been a popular thing. I'm curious if that's going to affect stuff.
Yeah, and Sony is not doing anything comparable. They have PlayStation Now, but that's for much, much older games. There's no indication that Sony would ever put Horizon one dawn, on like day one on something like this, and I don't think they probably will anytime soon. So it's partially because Xbox is in a position of weakness that they would do this at all, but it's very interesting. Next, the Master Chief Collection is getting its next big update. Halo Reach, which had been announced a while ago, is coming to the Master Chief Collection on December 3rd. It will also be launching on PC that day as the first entry in the PC version of the Master Chief Collection, which is coming out piecemeal. Other games in the collection will be rolling out later. But finally, Sean, every major Halo game will be in the MCC, Halo Reach being the last one, the last Bungie-developed one that was missing, and it'll be everything that you have in the other ones. It'll be 4K, 60 FPS, and they are bringing over the entire Reach multiplayer suite, which is probably why this has taken so long. That's probably the complicated part of this, or the more complicated part of this. I am very excited because Halo Reach is a phenomenal game. Mm-hmm. I do think it's a little funny that this will be after the 4-year anniversary mark of the MCC. They're still putting it together. But hey, better late than never. I'm excited to play some Halo Reach.
It's interesting how it's like it feels like the story of the Master Chief Collection is like the story of or Xbox in this generation or something. Like it's just like it spanned almost the whole generation. It came out and was a complete fucking shit show in so many ways, and then through a lot of hard work and diligence and stick-to-itiveness, they have built it back up to now it is a full, complete thing. And thank God that the next generation consoles are going to be backwards compatible, because it would be so sad if you finally have all the Halo games on one collection for this console, and then you'd move on to the next thing. It's like, well, time to do it again. Shit. Luckily, it'll just be able to go forward. If you want to have all your Halo games, you can have all your Halo games and have fun playing them, because they're all very good.
And Halo on PC again, Sean. It has been a while.
Yes, not since Halo 2 for Windows Vista. The auspicious days of Windows Vista in the Windows gaming marketplace, or whatever the fuck that thing was called. That has been long since shut down. Finally, you can play Halo again on PC. And Reach is really good. Like if people have not played Halo Reach, I don't know how well the multiplayer will hold up, but that campaign is really fucking good.
That campaign is a motherfucker. I love it.
Yeah.
The developer of Virginia, an indie game from a couple of years ago that we really liked, announced their new game. It's called Last Stop. It's going to be on PC and consoles next year. I'm excited to spend 2 or 3 hours with whatever the hell they've cooked up.
Yep. I believe I gave Virginia the Please Make More of These award, because that game was really cool. They have not made more of those, so hopefully this will be another one of those, because I really like that game a lot.
And finally, they announced that Project xCloud, their streaming initiative, will be coming to PC next year and will support more controllers than just Xbox, including the DualShock 4. So you will be able to play an Xbox game with the DualShock 4, Sean. How weird is that?
That is very weird. This news has also reminded me of something that was not on this outline that I do want to briefly address, which is, have you followed anything about the utter shit show that is going on with Google Stadia right now, Jonathan?
Yes, and it's very funny, but it's also such a clusterfuck, I didn't feel like doing the research. So you go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, so basically, for people who don't remember, Google Stadia is the video game streaming service that Google is starting. That is the launch of it is very soon. I don't have everything in front of me, so there's not going to be a lot of specifics. Here we go. So it's launching November 19th, so 2 days from our recording. One day after this will come out. So it's basically, they're selling a $150 thing that has a Google Chromecast thingy in it and a controller, and you can use that to play the games. Eventually, Google Stadia will be free to own, presumably, and you will pay for the games individually. This is a critical key detail that I always forget, that everybody forgets, is that Google Stadia is not like Game Pass. It is not you pay $150 and then you do like $10 a month or something and you get all the games on the service. You buy the games piecemeal, presumably for full price. I still think they have not actually announced the pricing. We'll find out soon enough. The only game you get for free if you buy the Google Stadia premium package to be able to play it now is Destiny 2 and its expansions, because obviously normal Destiny 2 is free anyways. Although if you get the Stadia version of Destiny 2, you can only play with other people who have the Stadia version of Destiny 2. You cannot play with people who have the normal PC version of Destiny 2, because Google Stadia seems like an utter shit show.
Sean.
Yeah.
Sean, what better game to launch an online streaming game service with than an always online first-person shooter where latency, let's just say, might be a problem?
Yes. Well, you think if that's going to be a problem, Jonathan, let me read you what is the auspicious launch lineup for the Google Stadia. You've got Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So that's an old one. Destiny 2, The Collection. We talked about that. Guilt, which is the only Stadia exclusive so far. It'll come out to other stuff eventually. And it's just like a small sort of like indie horror looking game. Seemed fine. They like showed a trailer for it when they announced Stadia. Then you have Just Dance 2020 because Ubisoft loves just putting their shit on everything. They need to be able to, at the next E3, when they put up the card that says Just Dance coming to all platforms, they need that to be authentic, so they're putting Just Dance on Stadia. Kine, which I don't know what that is. I think it's another like sort of indie-style game. Mortal Kombat 11, Red Dead Redemption 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Samurai Showdown, and Thumper. And that is all the games. Those are all the games you will be able to play on your Google Stadia when you get it. And that's it. You can play 3 Tomb Raider games. You can play 2 fighting games that I cannot imagine that playing Mortal Kombat 11 or Samurai Showdown with latency is going to be doable. You have 2 rhythm games, Just Dance and Thumper, which as impossible it is to imagine playing like an intense competitive fighting game with latency, the idea of playing motherfucking Thumper, what is not only a rhythm game, but a rhythm game that hates you and wants to murder you in a good way. Like, Thumper is great. It was one of the best games of 2016. But any amount of additional input latency on Thumper would probably either render that game unplayable or at the least utterly fucking infuriating, because it's a hard game and you will die a lot if you don't have the right timing down. So that's 3 Tomb Raider games, 2 fighting games, 2 rhythm games, Assassin's Creed, Red Dead, Destiny 2, and 2 indie games. And those are all of the games that will be available if you buy the 150 version at launch.
If you buy it, and if you get it, because they haven't been able to ship these things, and in a Reddit AMA, the guy from Google Stadia offered to take down people's addresses and hand-deliver the Stadia kits because they couldn't figure out how to ship things at Google.
It's so crazy. And then on top of it, a bunch of like features they had announced, like the original entire premise of the fucking controller that they announced when they announced Google Stadia was that their controller was special and had Wi-Fi, like a Wi-Fi hookup in it that would allow them to communicate directly with the server. So you'd completely bypass the middleman of like your console or your TV or your computer, whatever you're streaming it to. So instead of streaming the inputs from the controller to the computer, then the computer streaming that, to the server. Instead, it's just the controller goes directly to the server. That will not work on launch. Also, one of the announced features is that any of your Google Chromecast devices would be able to use Google Stadia at launch. That is not the case. It is only the one that they are specifically selling for Google Stadia will work at launch. So if you're planning on, you have like a couple of Google Chromecast type devices and you're hoping to buy this thing, and play Destiny 2 on like one TV somewhere and then another TV at work or something like that, whatever your Chromecast situation was, that is not something that will work at launch. Also, there's no kind of family sharing plan. So if you want to play if you have Google Stadia and you want to play Destiny 2 with like your like wife or someone who knows, like if someone in your family, they have to buy it separately. Or like Mortal Kombat 11, you'd have to buy it separately. Because again, that list of games that I said are not the games you just get if you buy it. You have to buy all those games separately except for Destiny 2. So it seems like an absolute fucking nightmare. Like what was already I thought was an interesting, if like flawed kind of setup they had based on their initial launch, or not launch, but like announcement event. Now that we are on the eve of that thing actually coming out for people who are paying money for it, it just seems like this thing is entirely on fire. So Google has a history of shutting down projects that they've done that they didn't put full backing into and just sort of like scuttling them. And I would not be surprised if that happened to Stadia within a year or two. So interesting stuff.
All right, and finally this week for news, before we move on to some fun stuff, there was a report on the Bioware game Anthem by Jason Schreier over at Kotaku. I think most people have been assuming Anthem is dead, for good reason. Anthem has been completely radio silent for months. They have had no major updates. They have had no presence at EA conferences or shareholder meetings. There have been 2 major departures. The lead producer, Ben Irving, left Bioware, and then Chad Robertson, the head of live services at Bioware, which is pretty important for an always online live game, left the company. And I think most people have assumed Anthem was dead. But Jason Schreier's reporting is that it is actually not at all dead. Inside the company, they are working overtime, basically, to try to do a complete overhaul that is internally referred to as Anthem Next. They are not sure what form it will take, whether it will be sort of like a Taken King-style Destiny expansion that just tries to sort of tweak everything enough that it brings people back in, or whether it will go full-on Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, where they just start from scratch. They are still in the planning stages of that, but BioWare is not done with Anthem, and EA is not done with Anthem, even though I think from the outside looking in, a lot of us might say, maybe you should cut your losses, guys, this didn't work. I'm very fascinated by this, Sean, because there are a lot of models for what Anthem could do, but none of them are perfect. Like, you can make the Destiny comparison, but Destiny sold well from the beginning, and the Taken King was more of a really in-depth tweak than it was an overhaul, and the game had been steadily improving for a year by the time Taken King came out. You could go with the Final Fantasy XIV connection, but Square Enix basically bet the farm on fixing Final Fantasy XIV and gave that team all the resources in the world and all the time they needed, and I don't see EA doing that. Also, Final Fantasy XIV sold well. And any other example you have are games that did well. Anthem bombed. Mm-hmm. And they are trying to dig a trench to fix a bomb. There's no good comparison to how they fix this, and I think it's interesting that I guess this is BioWare's foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's one of those of where, sure that they are working on this overhaul. I'm curious, if it, the way that the Jason Schreier report is written, it makes it feel like it's so unsteady a thing of what they're trying to do with Anthem Next that I would not be surprised if it actually never even sees fruition. And yeah, it is that thing of where, yes, Taken King was a big sort of watershed moment for Destiny, where lapsed people who had left and people who were new, who had heard about Destiny, were interested in it, all kind of came in, and there's a big influx of interest in playing of Destiny. But Destiny was by no means a dead game between the launch and Taken King coming out. It was an extremely popular game that had millions of people playing it for that entire duration. They released 2 expansions that were not great, either of them, but House of Wolves was pretty good, and helped set that game more on the right track. And no point did Destiny feel like it was dying, or Bungie was cutting the cord or going radio silent. BioWare has been basically radio silent on Anthem since its launch, more or less. They missed every single date that they said they would do stuff for the roadmap, to the point where, whatever that roadmap would have been is completely dead. The couple of things that they have done, like the Cataclysm event, I kind of, follow a little bit of, whenever Anthem gets updated, just, see what's going on. None of those events have brought fans back. Basically, everyone talks about how shitty they are every single time they put something new in the game. So it is this feeling of just utter floundering that feels different to me than Destiny. It's probably closer to the Final Fantasy XIV situation, but that is also different because, one, that was an MMO. So Final Fantasy XIV, there's a bigger reason to do it just to get the monthly subscriptions coming in. It's also Final Fantasy, so it has a much bigger cachet than Anthem has or ever could have. And it came out at a very different time. The original Final Fantasy XIV came out in 2012 or something. That's an old game.
2010. It came out the same year as 13.
Shit, you're right. Yes. So that was a long time ago in a very different marketplace. That didn't have the same kind of competition that Anthem has now, where everybody's putting out games like this. The Division 2 came out this year, was well received. People played it. People liked it. It didn't do what Ubisoft wanted to do. It sold worse than the first Division.
this space is extremely competitive, especially because there's not a lot of room in this space, because every like seed that plants successfully grows into a massive fucking tree, because you have to spend so much time playing any one of these games to be able to get what you want out of it, right? Like, you're not going to be playing Destiny for like a week. You're going to be playing Destiny for months if Destiny works. Same thing with any of these games. So you, like, any reasonable person could only do like one or two of these in a year. And so it just feels like them trying to do this with Anthem, like, you've got to try to like recoup your costs somehow, and it's probably more cost effective to use something that has a foundation that you don't have to go through pre-production, designing art assets, coming up with all that shit from the ground up. But boy, do I think they have a ridiculous uphill battle for anything that comes out next for Anthem to be able to bring people back to that game.
So BioWare basically took a mulligan this generation. We could say.
They had Dragon Age Inquisition early on, which is pretty good, but that was basically like, that had last-gen versions of this, yes. So it's like, that was basically a last-gen game that got upgraded to this generation game.
Do you think there's any future? I mean, do you think they come back from this? Do you think Dragon Age 4 actually comes out? Like, I feel like I'm waiting any day now for the announcement that EA has shut them down. Like, I feel like that's where we're probably headed in the larger world of all this. Or maybe they get a Star Wars game and they come back from the dead. I don't know. That feels like the most likely thing to happen, but who knows?
Yeah, like, I think that Dragon Age 4 will come out, or it will get close to coming out before, if Dragon Age 4 hits too many development hurdles and that game gets canceled, I think that's it for BioWare. I think there's a chance that Dragon Age 4 sees release, and hopefully Dragon Age 4 is good. What I'm really worried about is that it's going to come out and it will be Anthemified, right? That it's going to either because it's what BioWare chooses to do, because, remember, the part of the original Anthem story that Jason Schreier broke a while ago, around the time that game launched, was that EA did not mandate that they wanted a live service game. BioWare chose to make a live service multiplayer game, and chose poorly, clearly. That's an instance of where the studio took a big swing on a very different kind of game, and they did not execute on it. So if they are not able to figure out their shit for Dragon Age 4, I think that that's it. But I do think that Dragon Age 4 will come out. I hope so. I don't want BioWare to die. BioWare's made some of my favorite games ever. It's a very different studio now than it was. But, at the very least, EA, put out fucking the Mass Effect trilogy on, like, what the fuck? At least do that. That would help bolster shit. BioWare's made some great games. What if you re-released them? Like, it's crazy that people have to be clamoring for re-releases of video games, because usually we're like, you guys are re-releasing too many games, try making new ones. This is an instance where I feel like everyone's like, no, please put out those games. What the fuck? And EA just doesn't do it for reasons that nobody will ever understand.
All right. Sean, let's talk about some really good video games today.
Yes.
So we have two games to review, one of which we've both played, one of which I've played a little of. We're going to talk Jedi Fallen Order in a second, but first let's talk Pokemon Sword and Shield. We're going to do spoiler-free on both of these, and I'm guessing on our next main podcast we will do a full Jedi Fallen Order breakdown. So think of this as first impressions. For Pokemon Sword and Shield, it's very first impressions, because I, Sean, am focusing on Jedi, because I will be at my PS4 for about another week, and then I am going on the road, so I can take Pokemon with me. I can't take Jedi with me, so I'm going to try to finish Star Wars and then play Pokemon. But I've played about 2 hours of Sword and Shield, and I've done some trading and battling online with my brother and some other people, and I really like it. Sword and Shield is the funniest and most horrifying thing in games on the internet this year, because people have just lost their absolute fucking minds over a game none of them had touched. And, so far what I will say, it's a Pokemon game. If you are still 25 years later waiting for Pokemon to do a giant, like, cataclysmic change in what it is, maybe it's time to end the relationship. I'm sorry, but it hasn't changed. You don't need to keep playing them if that's not what you want. Sword and Shield is not a massive evolution. It has a lot of really, really nice, I think, advancements. The world is gorgeous. It's a really cool region. Right off the bat, they've done a lot of nice little but like significant changes. Like this game, you can skip every inch of tutorializing if you want. You can just go catch Pokemon, and then by the time they want to tell you how to catch Pokemon, the dude will be like, I was going to tell you how to catch Pokemon, but you have a Pokemon. Good job. And it just skips it. It's great.
So does it make you walk into a field and then a random old man comes up to you and is like, hey, young boy, let me show you how to do... And you have to like watch a mock Pokemon battle as he like throws a fucking rock at a Rattata or some shit?
You can do it, but you don't have to.
Thank God.
If it's your first Pokemon game, like for a little kid, they can watch it. But yeah, they've cut that. It's actually got a pretty fast starting sequence, I would say, as recent Pokemon games go. It is I think the most notable thing for me so far is that the music in Sword and Shield kicks fucking ass. It is just rad as shit. It sounds like Dreamcast music. It sounds like sort of early 2000s like Sega music, sort of. It's really different for Pokemon. It's really good. I love that music. It's got such a good sense of character. Otherwise, I've only been to one or two towns. It does the thing that a lot of recent Pokemon games has done, where it's like taking off on a real world location, and I think it does that very well. This Galar region is England. It's fun to see all of that. Some people are bristling at it has no voice acting. And I think people just think all games need voice acting now. I'm fine with Pokemon not having voice acting, but I did in the back of my mind, Sean, because they do write British isms in, like people calling you mate and stuff. What I want more than anything is they should have had the Xenoblade Chronicles people dub Pokemon Sword and Shield. That would have been fucking hilarious.
Yes, just get your UK dub.
Yes, UK dub but they didn't do that. But yeah, I mean, the starter Pokemon I think are pretty cool. I went with Score Bunny. Score Bunny is really cool. Score Bunny in battle is constantly hopping from one foot to the next like it's a boxer bunny. It's very funny to watch. So far, I have not seen, I think, any but one old Pokemon in the wild. Like, it's all new Pokemon off the bat, and I think they're the coolest batch of new Pokemon the series has had in a really long time. And my brother has played significantly further in the game, in part because he is always into Pokemon, but also he's in Japan, and I think he's like, legally he has to, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's living in Japan, and apparently everyone he knows is also playing Sword and Shield over there. But he's played further, and he says that kind of keeps up, that there are some old Pokemon, but it's mostly new, and they're really cool. I really like them so far. I will report, Sean, the funniest thing I've seen, though, is that Thomas was reminding me of this. When Sword and Shield were announced, and there was the whole kick, whatever it was, the dust up about the national decks. Right. You and I said, well, but the cool thing about that is they get to just kind of concentrate on like the best of Pokemon, right? And we'll get a bunch of cool ones. And you had a line apparently in that podcast where you said they won't have to do fucking Zigzagoon or the ice cream cone Pokemon. Guess what 2 Pokemon I currently have? It's Sword and Shield.
Damn it.
Now, I'll say this. The ice cream cone Pokemon, my brother got it and traded it to me. I don't know where you see it in the game. It looks a lot cooler in 3D than it did way back in black and white. Like, it doesn't just look like a JPEG of an ice cream cone. Zigzagoon has had a complete redesign. It's a Galarian Zigzagoon, and he looks like a skunk now. And he actually looks really cool. It's an all black and white striped Zigzagoon. He glowed up. Zigzagoon looks good. So
I mean, if they revamped Zigzagoon, it's not as if the Zigzagoon is, by concept, an awful Pokemon. I mean, Zigzagoon has never been an awful Pokemon. It's more like, I feel like you only really need Rattata and we're basically good. It's the same thing with Pidgey. Like, you just don't need to do another, here's your, like, weird, like, rodent Pokemon, and here's your bird Pokemon that you fight in, like, the first region every single Pokemon game. That's my problem with Zigzagoon. So if they revamp Zigzagoon, that's fine.
And he's not all over the place. Like, I found one, and from what I could tell, he's fairly rare so far. Anyway, yeah. So so far, I think the writing is fun. It's not as overwritten as Sun and Moon were. I could never get into Sun and Moon because that game is just mountains and mountains and mountains of text, and Pokemon does not need a heavy story. For God's sakes, it's Pokemon. This feels much more in the vein of, like, earlier, Pokemon games where it's much more lightly narrativized, and so it moves a lot faster. So I'm having fun with it. I have not gotten to any of the gyms yet. I've been doing a lot of early stuff, but it's good. The battle system, I mean, it's classic Pokemon battles. The UI is very clean and nice, though. They've had to rethink a lot of things because this is the first Pokemon game to be on a single screen since Ruby and Sapphire on the GBA, because it's all been DS games. So they've had to rethink some things, but I think it's largely very good. Everything looks, I think UI and everything is very clean and fun to use. You have automatic EXP share on all the way through, so anyone in your party just gets equal EXP, so it's very easy to level Pokemon. You can have your box open anywhere. You do not have to go to a Pokemon Center. A lot of those little things they brought in from Let's Go, including all the Pokemon are on the map now, so you can just see them and choose who you're going to battle. Although I think they've done kind of a fun kind of meet you in the middle approach there, where there are, while you're in the wild grass, you can see all the Pokemon, but once in a while a little like exclamation point will pop up and the grass will rustle and you can go check what it is, and that will be a mystery encounter. But it's not just they randomly, you still always initiate. So I think it's a nice middle ground for all of that. But yeah, it's Pokemon. I think it looks like a really solid one. I'm very, very excited to play it. It seems really fun. It's got a lot of personality. But yeah, I have not gone super deep into it. One conclusion I have drawn is this does feel to me like a portable Pokemon game. I think, and we all knew this, I think if you were hoping for the massive revolution where they made a true like home console Pokemon game and everything changed and it's in 4K and you have full control of the camera and everything, that's not what this Pokemon game is. I have played it like half handheld, half on the TV, and it feels more at home to me in a handheld. And that doesn't surprise me. Game Freak has been doing this handheld for 20 plus years, and they only had 3 years of development time on this since Sun and Moon, and they also made Let's Go in the same time. Like, it does not surprise me that this feels a little more like a handheld game. I don't think it looks bad when you dock it and look and blow it up on the TV. I think a lot of people are trying to say it looks bad. It looks like a Nintendo Switch game in a lot of ways. Like, people are like, there's no anti-aliasing. I got a news to tell you, friends, about every Nintendo game of the last 10 years. Nintendo doesn't really do anti-aliasing on their first-party games. That's there in this Pokemon game as well. It looks fine, and it's very colorful, and I think the colors are really vivid on the TV. But, you know, Pokemon is and has always been a handheld series, and it still kind of feels most comfortable there. So, you know, your mileage may vary. If you don't want to play Pokemon Sword and Shield, I totally get it. Maybe don't go harass developers online, because I promise you there was no grand conspiracy here. They were just trying to make a Pokemon game. They made a Pokemon game. If you like Pokemon games, it seems like you'll like this one. If you have kind of fallen out of favor with Pokemon, that's okay. And if you feel really torn up about it, go see a therapist. Don't bitch about it online, because you have bigger problems if you're that upset about a Pokemon game being a Pokemon game.
Yeah, because that does, to me, that is like the biggest thing that, because I feel like, because this is something that has been like brewing in the Pokemon community for a while, is like a dissatisfaction with the, let's say, slothful pace at which Game Freak updates Pokemon in terms of like introducing like really new stuff and not like little tweaks, or here's Mega Evolutions, which is something we'll like drop in 2 games or something. And it's also a community that has been fantasizing since the 90s about the console Pokemon, and what that could be. And, you know, who knows, maybe Game Freak will, maybe the next one will be a big change. Probably not. It's possible, but it feels like this has like burst some people's bubbles that have like been cultivating a fantasy since they were children. In some ways, myself included. I mean, I haven't played a Pokemon game since like Emerald or whatever, so it's been a long time, so I don't have a big like skin in the game or anything like that. But I was like a little bit bummed when Sword and Shield was announced, to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, like this is another one of the games that they've been making. They haven't taken this opportunity to change things up in a way to like bring me in. I'm not like upset about it, but there are people that I think have maybe like probably don't actually like Pokemon anymore, but have been clinging to that franchise for a while, hoping that it would turn into the thing that they've been wanting it to turn into, and it just hasn't. And to those people, I will say this: play Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. It's a better game than any Pokemon game has ever been. So
it's very true.
Yeah, so just go to Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. It's better. I mean, it's still technically a handheld game, but seems like more of a console game in some ways than what Pokemon has done. So go play Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. I think it's on the Switch now, or if not,
it is.
Yeah, so it's on the Switch
Both of
now.
them.
It's on PC. It's on PlayStation. So go play Cyber Sleuth. Go play Hacker's Memory. They're great. Agumon is better than Pikachu.
I will say, and one thing I need to just stress, I think people who haven't played Pokemon recently, or in the last decade or two, do underestimate how much Pokemon has changed over the years. And I think people who are over-invested in Pokemon underestimate how much Pokemon is going to change. Does that make sense? Or overestimate? Because Sword and Shield, I think, if you're an outsider and you're just saying it's another Pokemon game, it is more different than you think it is. It is, you put it in on your TV, the environments are much bigger and more sweeping. The colors are much more vivid. There is just more stuff going on. It is more fully fleshed out. But it is not the full console Pokemon game you've been fantasizing about. Part of that is also, I think, the thing people want, like when they're saying, like, why are there jagged lines on things? Like, it's the Nintendo Switch. Like, some of what I've been seeing people wanting is, like, the Switch can't do that, guys. Shut the fuck up. Like, some of that is just ridiculous. But, like, you know, it's a series that has this set identity, and I just think that it's a certain point. It's like being in a bad relationship for years and years and expecting any day now they'll change and drop every habit I hate. Maybe you need a new relationship, and maybe Digimon is the answer. But, like, you know, I think if you are a fan who kind of... Like, here's my attitude on Pokemon, Sean. I try every one of the new games, and sometimes I'm really drawn in because I think they've made something really cool and solid and that is transformative enough that it kind of brings something new to the table. I thought X and Y was that. X and Y is a fantastic game. And then I get to some like Sun and Moon where they've made some cool like changes and stuff, but it was too like... One, I didn't think it brought enough new to the table, and I thought it was just a subpar Pokemon game. But I didn't go harass people about it. Sword and Shield feels to me like it's more on the X and Y side based on just a couple of hours, but we'll see. But it's just, you know, I also go in with the expectation that fundamentally at its core, this is Pokemon, and I think you know what you're getting. It would be like bitching about Call of Duty having you run down corridors and shoot people. I don't know. It's gonna, in part, it's gonna be what it is. And, you know, it's the most successful franchise in the history of gaming. It's gonna do its thing. So, whatever. I don't know.
Pokemon. If you want it, get it. If you don't want it, don't get it. If you think you want it, but you know in your heart of hearts that you don't. Just move on. Play Digimon. It's better.
And if you are passing around hashtags harassing developers who were just trying their best to make a nice game for you, I'm 100% serious. Go to therapy. You have a problem. You have a serious mental problem, and you need help. Because there are people I have seen online who just need help. It is insane.
It's ridiculous,
all right.
Yeah.
Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order.
Talking about things that never are ridiculous and never have hate mobs associated, let's talk about Star Wars.
Sean, let's talk about Jedi Fallen Order. We will not be spoiling anything on it today. We will save that for a future discussion. We have both been playing this game. Sean, I will just give my quick 10-second impression, which is that they could not have engineered a Star Wars game more specific to my personal interests if they had tried. And I am a very, very happy Star Wars fan this weekend. This is the Star Wars game for me, and I fucking love it. What about you?
Exact same boat. There were a couple of things that I thought the game didn't have that it does actually have. It does have, you can turn the lightsaber on and off. I just didn't know how to do it, but you can do it. It's on the D-pad. And for a while, I was very annoyed by that, and that was the biggest thing the game was missing. That was my second biggest criticism, and I figured that out. Here's my biggest criticism of the game. They put the colon after the word Jedi in the title, technically.
It's fucked up, yeah.
It's Star Wars Jedi : Fallen Order, and it's like, I get it, you fucked up, you gave this game 2 subtitles, that's your fault. I don't know why you didn't just call this game Star Wars Fallen Order. I have no idea why the word Jedi is... I know why the word Jedi is in the title, and marketing executive said, you're playing
Why
Jedi
would they ever put
game.
the word Jedi in a Star Wars title?
Yes.
What could the possible reason be?
It might be because they literally haven't made a game like this since 2009, since The Force Unleashed 2. It's unbelievable, Jonathan. It's been 10 years since they've made a proper fucking Star Wars action game. And this is one of the best Star Wars games ever. Like, it is. I mean, I'm not done with it, so if it has a really bad turn at some point, based on where I am, my feelings on it are, like, it is probably maybe not quite as good as Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, or those games. Those games have like a very like special place in my heart, so that's like nostalgia is factored into that one. But it is in that echelon of the upper echelon of Star Wars games. If you want to run around as a Jedi and do Jedi stuff and explore cool Star Wars worlds, hit people with lightsabers, use Force powers to solve puzzles, all that good stuff. It feels in some ways like a very modern take on what a Jedi Knight game would have been. To the point where they might as well have just called it Star Wars Jedi Knight Fallen Order, which would have been a better title than having the word just Jedi there, which is dumb.
Yeah, I love it, man. So let's recap what this is for people. This is a new Star Wars game, single player, by Respawn Entertainment. Respawn is the company that made Titanfall 1 and 2, and is made of former employees of Infinity Ward, the company that Activision gutted after Modern Warfare 2. Mm-hmm. So all those people went, they made Respawn, they made Titanfall 1 and 2. And I would say, Sean, between Titanfall 1, Titanfall 2, and now this, I think Respawn is pretty well established as one of the best Western developers in the industry. Yeah. I think you can say that now.
Absolutely, especially with this, like, showing them being able to, as a studio, do a very different kind of game. Key to that is also the game director for this game is Stig Asmussen, who worked on God of Wars 1 and 2 and was the game director for God of War 3. So that's where some of the pedigree for the third-person action and kind of third-person puzzly stuff comes from that. So it's not just like the exact same team that made Titanfall turned around and made this third-person exploration action game. It is a two-team studio, this team being led by Stig.
Yes, absolutely. The story doesn't really matter, but the story is that you have a Jedi Padawan named Cal Kestis who survived Order 66. It's 5 years after Order 66. He's scrapping on a planet. Events happen, and now he's on a ship, and he's running around looking for Jedi Temple shit. Again, this is... I actually love how much this is not a story-driven game. It warms my fucking heart. But really what this game is, it can be summarized pretty simply. It is a glorious, glorious blend of Star Wars, of course, but also, from video game sense, it is Uncharted, Dark Souls, and Metroid Prime, specifically Metroid Prime 3, had a baby all together, big four-way, and they made this game. So it's got a lot of Uncharted-style sort of platforming and climbing and action sequences and things like that. But the overall game structure is basically Metroid Prime 3, where you have a series of planets, and each of those planets is sort of like a focused major Metroidvania-style level. And then when you go into those, it's very Dark Souls-esque in how everything kind of interrelates, and there are shortcuts. But then the combat is fairly Dark Souls-esque, and particularly the progression mechanics, where you have basically the Jedi version of bonfires, where you go and meditate, and that is where you can spend your leveling points. If you die, your leveling points are all like kept. Your leveling points, your EXP is all kept by the enemy that killed you. You have to go find them to get it back. So it's got that sort of Dark Souls-y mechanic. And you put all of that together, it does all of it so well. And if you know anything about me, these are three of like my favorite kinds of games you could possibly make. And I have to say, one thing that's super refreshing about it is that these are not the kinds of things that Western game developers do a lot. Like the Dark Souls thing, the Metroid thing, not a lot of Western developers do it. And frankly, not many have tried to do the Uncharted thing. Really, like Tomb Raider, but not a ton of other game studios have tried to do this. And I think it has some issues. It's not a perfect game, but it excels at all of these, and it is really impressive, and it is just so fun to sit down and play and explore and fight with your lightsaber. It's fantastic. Just to like set the scene, Sean, I'm playing on the second highest difficulty, Jedi Master. What are you playing on?
I am playing on Jedi Grand Master, which is the hardest.
So you went all the way up?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the highest. And what's the like latest planet you've been to? I don't think this is a spoiler.
I have gone all the way through. So some of the planets you visit multiple times. So I've been through Kashyyyk all the way once, and I'm on the planet you go back to after that.
Okay, I'm in the exact same place. So you and I have both been through Kashyyyk, so we've played a good chunk of the game. So that's kind of my setup on what this game is. What do you want to add to that, Sean?
I would say the combat, because so when you say it's like Dark Souls-esque, that's a lot of like the level design structure, the shortcuts, and the meditation point / bonfire. You also have like Estus Flask equivalents, so your droid BD-1 has healing stims that he gives you, that you have like a set number that you can unlock and get new ones as you explore the environment and get different stuff. But it's basically, you start out with 2, and every time you go to a meditation point and you meditate, you recharge all of your healing items, but then all the enemies respawn. So it's the Estus Flask equivalent as well. But the combat stuff is it's a lot like Sekiro, at least in terms of concept.
It's a lot like Sekiro, yeah.
In a way which is really surprising because that game came out in March. So, I don't know, how these two games are so similar. I don't know if they revamped elements of Fallen Order when they saw pieces of Sekiro at some point, because they're very similar. You have a stamina bar at the bottom of your screen. You also have a force bar for your force powers you generate by defeating enemies. But your stamina bar decreases only when you block things. It's not a Dark Souls stamina bar that decreases when you swing your lightsaber. So if you block too many hits without recharging your stamina bar, you will be put in a stun state and you can get hurt. Human enemies have the same thing. So human enemies also have stun bars, and by parrying which is by default on L1, the exact same button as it is on Sekiro, if you parry the enemy attacks effectively, you will hurt their stamina bar, and you can either kind of put enemies into stun states and stamina bars and get pretty easy kills on them. There's not exactly the death blow equivalent to Sekiro, but there's something pretty close. It's not as effective as a death blow, but you have special execution moves you can do if they're weak enough and you broke their stamina bar. And yeah, so it's got that whole stamina kind of Sekiro parry concept. It's definitely nowhere near as precise as Sekiro. So if you're coming out of Sekiro and you want something that is of that caliber, it is not of that caliber. One thing that is interesting that they do, that I wish every video game did this, is the difficulty modes tell you what they do. So the difficulty modes do not change the amount of damage you deal. So it's never anything about putting it on hard makes the enemies more damage spongy. A 3-hit combo that kills an enemy on the easiest difficulty will kill an enemy on the hardest difficulty. The difficulty changes is the parry window. So if you're on Grandmaster, the parry window is much tighter. If you're on the easiest difficulty, the parry window is incredibly broad. It changes how much aggression the enemies have. So how frequently the enemies will attack you changes based on the difficulty, and then how much damage you receive also changes. So on my difficulty, enemies can kill me very, very easily. Some enemies can... Right now, I'm leveled up enough that I'm not usually running into people who can one-shot me, but early on in the game, you could get one-shotted pretty easily. Very tight parry windows. I don't know if the game is necessarily fully designed to be this hard, because it is about Sekiro difficulty, but without the precision of Sekiro. And I considered bumping it down at one point, but I got leveled up enough that now I'm happy with where my difficulty is at. So I would say if you're someone that enjoys really hard games and wants to, maybe start at the difficulty, Jonathan, you're on, and then after you get a couple of health upgrades, bump it up to Grandmaster so you're not getting one-shotted. But I am at a place where I'm very much enjoying the combo or the combat in the game. While it is very Sekiro influenced, or has a lot of those concepts, it is more actiony than Sekiro. It's more, you have multiple different combos. You have your skill tree will unlock moves that you can use, special force, the kind of lightsaber attacks that allow you to dash around really fast. It does the kind of Devil May Cry-ish thing where if you can unlock a combo where you press R1, or I press R1, I rebinded the attacks immediately to have attack beyond R1 and heavy attack on R2, because that's how my brain works. You can rebind all the controls, which is great. But if you do a light attack and then pause and do another light attack, you will do a different type of hit. So it's got a little bit more of that kind of character action stuff in there. It's not a lot, but it's definitely more character action-y than a From Software game or Sekiro is.
Yeah, and I'll just say for my difficulty level, I'm on Jedi Master, which is the second highest, and it's a proper challenge. If you want a really... that was honestly the biggest surprise for me, Sean, is that, a lot of games will tell you, we took inspiration from Dark Souls or Sekiro or something like that, and they usually don't mean it, right? Mm-hmm. Because those are really... Or Metroid. These are really tough games to actually take influence from. It's really nice that Jedi Fallen Order has an easy difficulty if that's not the kind of game you want. But if you want to be challenged, this is a properly challenging big AAA Western release, and we don't get a lot of those, I don't think, in this kind of mode. And you can make it really hard. And Jedi Masters, definitely, it'll push you. This is kind of like in a Sekiro or FromSoft vein, minor enemies on the map can kill you very quickly if you fuck up. Yeah. And I think that's really a good way to do it. Yeah, and I've been curious to bump it up to Grandmaster. The only thing that has kept me back from that, Sean, is that I am bad at parry mechanics to begin with. I'm getting better at it here. I don't think the parry windows are super precise in this game, and I'm a little worried about being too challenged by that on Grandmaster, but it is plenty challenging on Jedi Master difficulty, and definitely is a good, fun challenge that will, kind of put you on your feet, put you on your toes, which is good. It is not a Star Wars, power fantasy game in that sense, you are not crazy overpowered at any point. So yeah, it's really cool, and I think, the combat is probably the thing I was most surprised by, just in terms of how good it is, like that, and then just the intricacy of the level design. But, it would be so easy to fuck something like this up, but the combat is incredibly engaging, and I think they find lots of cool ways to keep it fresh and kind of give you different kind of enemy types and different sort of enemy arrangements, and there's just so many cool things you can do. It will never get old firing blaster bolts back at stormtroopers to kill them by parrying your lightsaber. That is one of the coolest things you can do in a video game.
Yes, and that's what, and I imagine that is probably where the parry mechanic was born. Was it's a question that Star Wars games always, that do Jedi stuff, always have to ask, is how do you deal with the blaster reflection mechanics? And this is the right way, that it's if you just hold down block, he will just block every blaster bolt that comes at him, but it'll drain your stamina bar. If you time the block appropriately, you will just zap that thing right back to that stormtrooper, and you will fuck that dude's day up. And it's good. It feels incredibly satisfying. And there's a really good variety of enemy types, because you have there's a bunch of different kinds of stormtroopers. They have to do the thing that these games need to do, where it's here's the stormtrooper with the stun baton that can block lightsabers somehow, which is fine. They put that in fucking episode 7 anyways, so sure, it's some kind of weird canon now that you just have cool stormtroopers with big shocky thingies that can block lightsabers, I guess. But so you have a wide variety of different human type style enemies that you can fight. But then there's also bunches of weird alien creatures on the planets you go to. And it is very satisfying kind of learning the intricacies of, the smaller enemies usually have very standard attack patterns that okay, this is the bug thing that will do one big hit, and then there will be a little pause where you think you can attack, but then it's going to do 2 smaller hits in that pause, so you want to block all 3 of them, kind of thing, which you really have to pay attention to on Jedi Grandmaster. You will die almost immediately. And then much more complicated, larger enemies that have more kind of elaborate strategies sometimes you have to employ. And one thing I really like is you have a whole kind of codex thing that is both you collecting information from the environment, where your character has psychometry, I think is what it's called. It's something that a character named Kinlan Voss in the old Star Wars lore had. This is kind of cool that they brought back, where if he touches something, he can kind of get an impression of what its owner was, or something like that, through the Force, so you can kind of understand the history of a place by touching it. So they do a lot of world building collectibles you can get that way. But also, when you defeat enemies, your droid can scan them, and if you are not reading the little blurbs on those, you really should if you're playing on the harder difficulties, because they give you extra little hints of oh, this is a good way to deal with this kind of enemy. Maybe if a big force were to hit this enemy, then it would be in a stun state. It's that kind of stuff where it's okay, you want me to use force push on this guy, cool. And you have to always defeat the enemy one time before you get that information. So if you fight something the hard way, it'll kind of let you know, okay, this is maybe an easier way to deal with this enemy. And now that I'm returning to areas I've been to and going to different places, I'm encountering enemy types I hadn't fought in a couple of hours. And there was a cool moment of me how the fuck do I fight these guys again? Oh yeah, I dumped into my pause menu, went to my codex, read the thing again. It's oh right, this is the enemy that I want to dodge around in this way. And there's a cool amount of preparation that almost feels Witcher-esque in terms of the monster enemies of how do I deal with this? Oh right, okay, this is kind of the strategy I want to use for this big lumbering creature.
Yes, I love the Codex stuff. I've been reading all of it because it's taken right out of Metroid Prime. with the scanning mechanic where you just scan all the flora and fauna, and it's not as comprehensive as that. In Metroid Prime, you could just scan everything at will. This is a little more scripted, but it's the same kind of depth of, like, there's a story behind everything. They've written all these great entries. A lot of the story is told through the scanning and through the psychokinesis or whatever it's called. And I really like how that's all done. Absolutely. But for me, Sean, like, the star of this game is just the overall layout and the exploration, and how much this game is. It really is like a Metroid Prime or Dark Souls, where it's more story driven, but it's really set you free, go explore these really intricate, beautifully designed levels. They're all really unique, and they all kind of loop back on themselves in really fun, like, compelling ways. And you're going to discover all these secrets, and it's so cool. And I love how much space it gives you to do that. Because, again, I don't think Western, particularly American-developed games, almost ever do anything like this. And it feels like, especially for a game published by E-fucking-A, a really bold way to make a game, and I'm in love with that element of it. And, my next thing is, after Kashyyyk, I'm going to go backtrack to some other planets and see some new stuff, and I'm so excited. This is like my greatest dopamine hit in games. I love this.
Yeah, because it's 100% the, like, you went to this temple and you relearned how to do force push, because the whole premise is you were Padawan, you were very young when Order 66 happened, so you have forgotten most of your training in the interim, so you have fun flashbacks where you kind of relearn some of your old Jedi powers, and it's like, oh, I can use force push. That means I can go back to this place on that planet and force push it open this door and get, like, a little like health upgrade or something like that. So it does that full thing. I think the one that I thought was funny is the first ability like that you get is wall running, which is a funny thing to forget how to do. It's like it's not like, oh, let me use my Jedi mind powers. I haven't used. It's like, oh, it's just you do a lot of crazy acrobatic shit at the very beginning of this game that he clearly has not forgotten how to do. But for whatever reason, the wall running is the one thing he's like, what did my master say about how you run on walls again? Oh yes, you put your feet on the wall and you run real fast.
I was disappointed that the wall running flashback wasn't just his master, like, was playing Titanfall with him on Xbox, because it's just taken from Titanfall.
Yes.
It's like, it's identical, and even, like, the surfaces you run on are just, like, they're assets from... There's no problem with it. I think it's really a good inclusion, but it is hilarious how it's the most, like, we already had this and it worked, so let's just put it in our Star Wars game. Why not?
Yeah, because I do really enjoy I enjoy all the traversal stuff. It's fun,
yes.
Like, especially, like... There's some areas where they combine a lot of, like, oh, you're, like, sliding down this thing and you jump off, do a wall run, jump off, grab onto a vine, like, flip up into the air, or do another wall run, like, jump through this, like, air vent or whatever that shoots you across the map. Some of the more elaborate acrobatic sequences I've enjoyed quite a bit, and I know that you get some other traversal powers at some point in the game that I'm excited to get my hands on, because it's a really cool cocktail of a lot of different things, because it is that you have the full Metroid Prime style elaborate environments with different kind of areas you can go through, that you can unlock things based on the powers you have, but it does have the more, like, kind of spectacle acrobatic kind of sequences of Uncharted. Some of the I haven't, like, outside of the beginning and a couple of other little things, I haven't seen a huge amount of, like, big cinematic stuff, but the stuff that has been there has been a lot of fun and very cool. And it is that kind of game where it's not necessarily doing any one thing super uniquely, but the specific cocktail they've put together of all these different influences, with, like, the Star Wars seasoning on top of it, comes out as something that feels pretty special and is the most addicting game I've played in a while. It's kind of like Sekiro in the sense of, like, I just cannot stop playing this game. I played it kind of nonstop every hour I could since I got it on Friday. And it's fucking it's so much fun, because every time you turn a corner, and it's that kind of thing, it's like, oh, I should probably go to bed, and then you see a thing, it's like, well, I could probably go get that thing. I'll just go get that thing, and then I'll go to bed, and then you play for like 2 hours longer than you intend to.
Oh man, Sean, I had that the other night, Friday night. I was playing on the Zepho planet, and I played until 3 a.m, and I literally, my controller fell out of my hands from fatigue, and that's how I knew I had to stop, because I was just trying to get back to the... like, I had finished what you had to do on Zepho. The game was telling me, leave the planet and move on, but I was still running around in it, because it's very Metroid-esque in that you like there's places you're supposed to go, but so much of it you can go around and like get a health pickup early or get a customization early. Like even if I can't go through that door, right next to that door is a box, and like you can just run around and see all these things. And so I was just taking so long to get back to my ship, and I kept and then I would hit a really hard part that I clearly wasn't supposed to see yet, and I would die, and then I would try it again, and finally just fatigue was like, okay body, I'm going to bed, I'm sorry, I've played too much Star Wars tonight. Because I do think you're right. It does not do any one of these things like the best. Like I think, as we would say, like the combat is not as precise as Sekiro. I think all of the like climbing, platforming stuff from Uncharted is not as tight as Naughty Dog would do it. Like there's definitely moments where it's a little unintuitive, or like, oh, that jump like is really easy to miss, and it shouldn't be easy to miss. Like in a Naughty Dog game, that would be kind of, you wouldn't have to think about it, and it's a little more like, this feels clunky. But you get all of the same kinds of dopamine hits that those things in those games get you, but you get them in this, as you say, cocktail where they're all together. And I've never played a game where the Uncharted dopamine hit comes in contact with the Metroid Prime dopamine hit, let alone a Dark Souls, Sekiro kind of FromSoft hit, and all of those in contact together is just absolutely addicting and so fun to play. And then you layer Star Wars on top of all of it, and like, I have to tell you, Sean, when I did not know this going into the game, when I learned you could change the color of your lightsaber, I was like on cloud nine, because I'm like, you mean I get to see a Star Wars thing without a blue lightsaber if I want? In 2019, I didn't think we would ever see that. I didn't think a hero in Star Wars would ever use anything but a blue lightsaber, but I can make mine green, I can make it orange, I can make it double-ended. The lightsaber customization is really cool. They should just release an iPhone app that's doing the lightsaber customization, because you can make some badass fucking lightsabers in this game. And so they've got the Star Wars side of it just down fucking pat. The sound team on this game, it's one of the best John Williams facsimiles I've ever heard. It's so good at like the music side of it. All the sound effects are perfect. It's got a really nice Star Wars-y tone. One of the nicest little touches is when you touch down on a planet, they do the Kurosawa wipe to bring your ship there. There's just so many things. And so you bring all this cocktail together. It's super well made. I think it's clearly lacking a coat of technical polish because it's got some hiccups here and there. Yeah. But it's really fucking good.
Yeah, it definitely has some technical jank to it. Have you done any of the stuff on Dathomir yet?
Yes.
So there is a bonfire on Dathomir where I don't know if this is how it works for you, but in my game, if I respawn at this one bonfire or meditation point, whatever, and I just sprint, I can sprint through like what is basically would be two different encounters with enemies before those enemies can even spawn in.
Yes, I've actually seen it at multiple bonfires on Dathomir. It does that.
Yeah, so I'd only ever noticed it at least with this one. Which also, for people who are just playing the game, Dathomir is a hard planet, but if you go to Dathomir, you can get some good shit early in the game that is very cool. Yes. And yeah, like it is. So there's like some technical jank. I haven't had anything that's like huge. I've heard people have like more kind of horror stories with like crashes and stuff. I haven't run into anything that bad.
I had one thing where on Dathomir, it's all been on Dathomir's. Well, Kat Kishik had some problems, but on Dathomir, I was building a lightsaber part. I went out. I accidentally hit R3 again. He went back in, but it was just showing the lightsaber table, but the character Cal was like moving away, and I could move the camera all first person, but I couldn't like it was stuck in between you're playing and you're on the lightsaber table, and I had to reboot the game. That was the biggest one I've had. Although on Kashyyyk, it frequently juddered a lot on loading in assets where the game would just freeze for like 5 seconds. That happened all the time on that planet to me.
Yeah, what are you playing it on a base PS4?
I'm playing it on a PS4 Pro, and I'm playing it in performance mode, which is where because I don't have a 4K TV, so I don't care about above 1080p resolution, so it unlocks the frame rate.
So I would maybe recommend putting it back onto quality mode, whatever the fuck they call it, the resolution mode. So by default, if you're playing it on a Pro or Xbox One X, by default it is on a mode that prioritizes resolution over frame rate. But what that actually means is that it locks the frame rate at 30 frames, which I watched the Digital Foundry video earlier today, and it is a locked 30 almost throughout the whole thing. It very rarely drops. And it's not a true 4K on the X or the Pro, but it is higher than 1080p if you have a display that can take advantage of it. If you're on the performance mode, It's a 1080p resolution, but it is an unlocked frame rate, but it is definitely not a 60. So like the performance mode has a wildly variable frame rate that to me makes the game almost unplayable. I know I'm more susceptible to that stuff than you are, Jonathan, but I would recommend at least putting it onto the quality mode and playing it a little bit that way, because some of the judder you're experiencing is probably the frame rate going from like 50 frames a second to like 20 frames a second when it's trying to stream in assets, and it's just like all over the place. If you're just playing on the quality mode or whatever they call it, it is a locked 30 all the way through, and I think it is a much better experience that way.
I think I was kind of tricked by it a little bit at the beginning, because I started doing that on the planet with the like where you meet BB1.
Yes.
And that one is probably the technically most sound, and I thought it was like the God of War performance mode, which is not a solid 60, but it's a really good performance mode. This seems like, it's a lot messier. So I watched that video over lunch today, and I haven't gone back to the game yet, so I will probably try it on quality mode,
Yeah, so that would be my recommendation to people. I mean, if you haven't touched that setting, it defaults to quality mode automatically, but yeah, when it feels like, and this is kind of what they say in that Digital Foundry videos, it feels like that exists basically with the understanding that the next-gen consoles are going to have backwards compatibility. So if you put a mode into the game that has an unlocked frame rate, it means the game will like basically be able to automatically take advantage of that additional power. And that's kind of what it feels like they've done. But yeah, like the game has weird like asset streaming problems. That seems like weirdly variable from like console to console. Like some people have more issues with it because it depends on like hard drive stuff. It does feel like it is like an advocation for we need to move to SSDs, because this is sometimes, particularly on Kashyyyk, there are just areas where the game has problems streaming in assets, and you will hit. It's almost like playing the original Half-Life, where it's like it's a seamless level, but you'll just hit a point where it's like, oh, we need to put a little loading like progress thing in the corner, and we need to just stop the game for about 3 seconds to allow shit to load in while you're like looking at it. It's an Unreal Engine game, so luckily EA did not shackle them to Frostbite. That also means that it has lots of asset pop-in, like texture detail pop-in. My favorite is there's an area on Dathomir where BD1, it's like a cutscene that triggers it. BD1 goes to scan some sort of like stone plaque, but the cutscene like the camera cut to the plaque, the assets have not totally streamed in yet, so it's just like this totally like blank, muddy looking thing of rock that like slowly the runes on it load in because it's like the top level texture detail. So there's like little like janky things like that. I haven't had a huge amount of trouble with it, but it's something to be aware of playing the game. But that shit aside, it's fantastic, and it like. This is the most fun I've had with Star Wars in a long time. Like, it's just, I feel like, and we'll talk about The Mandalorian, which I've also enjoyed, particularly episode 2, but it's like, the recent just feel on Star Wars for me has been so negative for a while, especially since Rebels has been done for a couple of years, that it's just like, I just have not had a lot of fun Star Wars stuff. And this is just so fucking fun. The lightsaber sound effect is fucking great. It's crazy that it's just been so long since I played a game where I can use a lightsaber. That like using a lightsaber in a video game should not feel fresh to me, and it feels so fresh because it's been 10 fucking years since Force Unleashed 2. And especially, I really love how much this game feels like, without them being like direct like character things, but just the general world feel, it feels really tied into Clone Wars and Rebels, the two animated series, since it's set a little bit before when Rebels takes place, and 5 years after Clone Wars. Basically Clone Wars almost goes up to Order 66. It's in this sweet spot where you get like good, like, here's the holocron that Obi-Wan sends out in episode 3 that all the Jedi have, that warns them about Order 66, and you see that holocron, and it's the dude who plays Obi-Wan in Clone Wars, and there's a whole thing in Rebels dealing with that holocron also that's like ties in really well. Your Jedi Master that your character had, that presumably died during Order 66, the game has not specifically said that, but that's probably what has happened to him. He is a Lasat, which is the alien race that one of the main characters in Star Wars Rebels is. That's like based on the early Ralph McQuarrie design drawings of what a Wookiee would look like. And so that's cool. It's like, oh, here's the Lasat, like, which is a race from Star Wars Rebels. All the Kashyyyk stuff. There's Kashyyyk stuff from Star Wars Rebels. Saw Gerrera is in the game. Who he's a character originally from Clone Wars that's also in Rogue One, the Forrest Whitaker character that's also in an episode of Star Wars Rebels, so that feels like it's tied in that way. There's just a lot of little tiny things like that that feel like it's way closer to those series than it is to any of the individual movies or anything like that. Even just being able to go to Dathomir, which is a planet heavily featured in the last couple of seasons of Clone Wars, which is some of my favorite stuff in that show, and like finding out stuff about what happened to the Night Sisters of Dathomir and all of that. It is a really cool Star Wars fan thing, or like Star Wars, like the thing for Star Wars fans, made as a video game in an era of Star Wars where no other video games are here. And so some of like the best Star Wars media of the past few years has been these TV shows, and there just have been no good Star Wars games since those TV shows came out and were good. And so it's like the first time I've been able to play a Star Wars game that is influenced by what is my favorite Star Wars media of the past 10 years, which is Clone Wars and Rebels. And that is a really cool feeling. So if you're someone who has seen those shows and enjoys them, this is a Star Wars game that feels like the people who made this game watched those shows and liked those shows and brought like little world elements from those shows directly into this game.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that that's all there. And I also just want to say to anyone who's sort of on my side of the table where you've seen all the movies but don't watch all the shows and do the EU stuff, it's 100% accessible.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing in here that's like, you have to. It's like, I did not know until I looked it up that Dathomir is Darth Maul's planet and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I love that that's tied in. But also for me as a player, Dathomir is just this, because like Cal doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And it's really just cool to like go to Dathomir and be like, this is a cool, creepy planet with some fucked up shit going on. So it kind of hits, I think whatever kind of Star Wars fan you are, this'll like hit your Star Wars erogenous zone.
Yes.
That joke came out wrong. I stumbled over every word of it.
Yeah. It also does a much better job than most Star Wars stuff does of the like interim period between episode 3 and 4, which is such a busy area for Star Wars and has been for a while. And I feel like a lot of stuff doesn't do it very well. And I like here, it feels like the game is very focused on really looking at like what are the consequences of this switch over to the Empire. I mean, just like the opening level of the game, which takes place in a shipyard where the Empire is dismantling all the old Republic starfighters and taking those pieces and turning them into Star Destroyers. Like that is a amazing fucking like visual. It's an awesome opening, but then it also just sort of like sets up stuff for like the feeling of the tone of the game in the state of the world, which is much more raw than like where you are in episode 4, or even in some ways Star Wars Rebels, which is a little bit further into it, where here like the Empire feels more fresh, and just like, you know, stumbling upon like, you know, a pile of battle droids, just like of destroyed battle droids, like carcasses or whatever, piled up on that Junker planet, or sometimes running into like the remains of an ancient Clone War battle, which you see some like little bits of and pieces of that. Like seeing a hologram that has a clone in it that is voiced by the dude who voices the clones in the Clone Wars. Like all that, it feels really tied into that era of Star Wars in a way that feels very smart, and not just, this is a spot where we can set a game where we can have TIE fighters and stormtroopers, so let's put it there. It feels like it's more motivated than that, which is like kind of how I felt looking at the early trailers of the game, my fears of like how it would deal with the setting. It feels like it's much more concerned with dealing with like the reality of the world, which it also kind of feels like an influence from those shows, which are very much about the world building and the setting and the role that plays on the characters. And this kind of takes that storytelling idea into the game, and fully into the game, because so much of it is also about you exploring these spaces and picking up collectibles and getting little pieces of backstory that tie into all that stuff as well.
Yeah, because, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Sean. I don't find the core like story and characters particularly compelling, but I don't care. This is not the kind of game that needs that. What it excels at is what it needs to excel at, which is the sense of world building and a world to go discover that is really compelling to see and find. And I think it's exactly what you say. I think it has a really interesting vantage on that middle period that I haven't quite seen before, and it is really cool from the beginning to where I am now. Like, I think, I just did the stuff on Kashyyyk, and, like, seeing how Saw Gerrera is used, and even though I don't have a pre-existing relationship with that character, really, like, it does feel like, okay, this is a really compelling version of a world that has not... It's not the settled version of the world that Luke comes into. This is like, everyone's coming in hot. People are really mad about the Empire. It does all that really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of with you, like... It kind of feels like the A-plot of the game hasn't really started yet. I've heard some things that make it sound like the story gets more interesting in kind of the second half of the game after you do the, like... It's got this very, like... Honestly, it reminds me most of Knights of the Old Republic, because it has a similar thing of, like, oh, you have to go to these, like, 3 places or whatever and get, like, the thingy that will give you access to this other thing. And in Knights of the Old Republic, it was, like, coordinates to some sort of, like, hidden location, and your star maps you have to go to on all these different planets. And it kind of feels like that, and I suspect that once you get through, like, that first, like, kind of opening section of the story, that it's going to get into some more interesting stuff. Because, especially, like, there's, like, some... weird shit that you see on Dathomir, like a weird dude you meet on Dathomir that I really want to know what that guy's deal is, who the fuck that dude is. He's
basically a Star Wars Dark Souls NPC.
Yeah, it's really weird. And there's like, I feel like I there's like something in the back of my mind was like, have I seen this character in something else? And I just don't know it yet because he's older looking or something. I don't know. But there's something weird about that dude that I'm very intrigued by. And I also I'm excited to see the Sith Inquisitors again, because that's something else they pull from Star Wars Rebels, where you have these Dark Force users that go around that are very cool, called Sith Inquisitors, that are like the Emperor's sort of like elite Jedi hunting task force. And you have a run-in with them at the very beginning of the game, and I haven't seen them again yet. But the main one, the Second Sister, is a really good design. She's the coolest Sith Inquisitor they've had since the first one, because there are a couple in Rebels that don't really work for me, but she feels like there's some legitimate menace coming off of that character that I really want to see her again. So, like, I think right now the story is in this kind of cool phase where it's just explore the world, like, get the sense of where things are at. But I think some of the stuff with, like, your weird Jedi mentor lady, Sarah, that you've met, like, she's cool, or Kara, however you pronounce her name. I think there's some cool blocks they put in place that I hope they pull through for, like, some cooler story stuff. But I'm also with you that if that never amounts to much more than here's a kind of an okay Star Wars story in a really good Star Wars setting, that is good enough for me for what I want from this game.
Yeah, and if the story picks up later, that's great, but I do think for what I've played so far, I think any more narrativization would be a drag on this game. This kind of gameplay is not conducive to a heavy amount of story. And so I think they've calibrated it just right, and if after you've explored a bunch of stuff, they want to kick in the narrative, that's the time to do it, so I'm curious to get there.
Yeah.
What do you think about Cal Kestis? I think he has the most punchable face of any Star Wars protagonist, and I think Cameron Monaghan's kind of a weird-looking dude to begin with, but you put him into uncanny CGI, and it's a little off-putting, and I don't dislike the character or anything. I like his voice, but boy, he's got a punchable face.
I wonder, this is where, like, I'm kind of curious where the story goes, is I'm wondering how much of that is intentional, because I get the same vibe from him, but it's also, like, I don't know how old Dominic Monaghan actually is, but the character feels like he's like 16 years old, which would be appropriate. Yeah. Like he was a young Padawan during the war, so he's like a kid in a weird way, and he feels very youthful.
Yeah,
and especially
like all of his stuff with BB-1.
Yeah, all of his stuff with BB-1, which also BB-1 is, I think, one of the best droids Star Wars has had. There's something like I'm not like a big droid character guy. I know that there's some people who are like really into the droids, and they like BB-8, is that the one from...
Yeah, BB-8's great.
Yeah, BB-8, the new movie's like, BB-8's fine. I like HK-47 from KOTOR because he's an actual character who has like dialogue and stuff. But I'm like usually not super into the cutesy droids. There's something about how like tight Cal and BD-1's relationship is in this that like feels like more authentic to me than just like the, hey, you're fun droid BB-8 stuff from the new movies is fine, but it just feels like a little bit like we're trying to sell a toy to me, whereas this feels like, no, this is like, they're buddies, like they're legitimate buddies that like get a chat with each other. I think it's like the space that the game has to be able to just like have fun little moments between the two of them works really well. But yeah, so I really like his relationship with BD-1, and it makes him feel like it's like a kid playing with like their puppy or something. And then also his relationship with Saw on Kashyyyk also makes him feel very young. How immediately he kind of buys into all the stuff that Saw Gerrera does. Like I hope that they're setting up stuff for that character, because I think there's material they've set up with like how kind of naive and a little like punchable he feels, to use your words, that they could do cool stuff with it if they choose to do so, and I hope they do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious how much he gets characterized later on, because my reaction so far is that I don't know why Cal Kestis couldn't be like a pick a male or female version of this character and just swap him out and like do two. I know it would cost more, but like it's all in-engine stuff. It wouldn't be impossible to do, because there's nothing like so specific about the character. He had to be this. So I'm curious if more comes of it. He's not like, overall this is obviously much more interesting than like The Force Awakens, but he's no Rey. He doesn't have like the presence of a Daisy Ridley or something, or like a really compelling Star Wars protagonist. So I'm curious where it goes. I just looked it up. The actor is 26, so he is young, and he's done like, he's played kids for a long time, and he was a child actor, so it kind of makes sense, that age range to cast. But yeah, it's interesting, and I think when his youthfulness comes out is what I like most. Like when he's just going around and BB-1's his buddy, and all of his dialogue with BB-1 is the most charming. I find that character, and BB-1 is a great little droid.
Yes, like you get a like here's something that I know some people don't like about it, but I actually kind of love, is the like. So you don't have, this is not a loot game. You're not getting lightsaber parts that have like +5 to health or anything like that. There's also no stats. So when you say like Dark Souls, we're not saying like it has an RPG mechanic to it. All of the XP just goes into skill points on a skill tree, that is also more like Sekiro, in that like you kind of stock up a skill point. Once you have a skill point, you don't lose it. It's only the XP you have to your next skill point that you can lose. But so like a lot of the stuff you find in the environment is like occasionally you'll find like, oh, here's like a health upgrade, here's a new like stim pack thing, but the majority of it is, here's like a different poncho for my dude to wear that just looks different, here's a different color scheme for the ship, here's a different color scheme for BD1, and then there are not including colors, I think there are 4 different pieces of the lightsaber that you can customize, and yes. I know that there are some people that like wish that there was more like kind of like more like quote unquote like valuable doodads, more things that like contributed directly to the gameplay. I really like that this game is not trying to, as someone who just played The Outer Worlds, which has too much bullshit loot in it that means nothing, I'm really like to have a game that's like, I'm happy to get like, here's a little like, cool sleeve on my lightsaber that I can put on if I want, because I actually honestly care more about my lightsaber looking cool than I do about like doing 2% more damage or something like that. I like the focus the game has on cosmetics, even if I wish that like the cosmetics for Cal himself were a little bit more dramatic than just like palette swaps. I think I prefer having like, give me a new cool like coat of paint for BD1 rather than like a helmet or something for my dude.
Yeah, I think I come somewhere down in the middle. I agree. I think they're 100% correct not to have like stat boost loot stuff. Like that would be totally wrong for this game. They made the right approach with the Sekiro style skill tree, and then everything else is purely cosmetic. That's what this had to be. But I do think that just because it's got that Metroid-y style exploration, I think too many of the rewards for that exploration are very simple cosmetics, the majority of which you probably will never use, and too many of them are too bland. Like, one thing I thought immediately is that the skill tree has health. The skill tree has health and force power-ups, and I think those should be entirely taken out of the skill tree and put into the world, and there should be more of finding basically this version's game of heart pieces or energy tanks from Metroid and Zelda. Like, that to me would be much more rewarding, where it's not changing it's not like a +2, but it's just finding things to like get your health and force up, those being some more explorable things, and then maybe cutting down on the level of cosmetics. That's what I was thinking. But it doesn't bother me that much. I enjoy finding the cosmetics, especially the lightsaber ones. The lightsaber ones, they're really good. You can make some cool ass looking lightsabers. I do think the sheer tonnage of Cal ponchos that look the same is a little ridiculous. But I do like having some of the different skins for BB1 because there's some really cool ones there. Yeah. I have him with the Yavin red, and that one looks really cool.
I do. The thing I like about the ponchos is like theming them to wherever I'm going and like making the character look different. Again, I wish that they were like. It's like I wish you could get different looking outfits and maybe different palettes of those, but like you there's only the one look, and you can choose to have a poncho or not have a poncho. But other than that, it's only the color schemes. But the star of the show is the lightsaber. Like this is a lightsaber fetish game in many ways, which is good because we have never had that video game. As shocking as it is, like the closest you get is Jedi Academy, which allows you to select from like 8 or so lightsaber presets. There's no game in which you customize your lightsaber, and I've never understood how that has never been a thing. Part of the reason why it's never been a thing is that it's been fucking 10 years since we had a good Star Wars game. So it's been a long time since we've been able to try it. Like Force Unleashed has a bunch of different lightsaber colors, and lightsaber colors is common. But in terms of building a cool looking lightsaber hilt, it's never really been a thing in games before. So just being able to like make my own custom looking lightsaber is such a huge thing to me, is like something I've been wanting from a Star Wars game for years and just have never gotten.
What color are you rocking right now?
So this is going to be... Here's my feelings on it. Cal Kestis is a green lightsaber character. Through and through.
Yes.
The way that character is designed is a green lightsaber. I am using a blue lightsaber because his lightsaber is his master's lightsaber. And I suspect at some point in the game, you're going to get a different lightsaber. And by suspect, I kind of know that at some point in the game, there's going to be some kind of Cal needs to do something to make a lightsaber thing. Some kind of thing.
Okay. I have not been role-playing that hard. I switched to green as soon as I could because I'm sick and goddamn tired of looking at blue lightsabers. Green is awesome. And then I forgot to redeem my pre-order bonus until today, and I realized you could have an orange one, and so I'm playing with my orange lightsaber at the moment. But I see where you're coming from, Sean.
Yes, I maybe like try to, as spoiler-free as possible, Google whether or not there would be a moment in the game where Cal would do something narratively with the lightsaber, and... I was so cautious about it that I'm still actually not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that at some point there's a Cal needs to build a lightsaber kind of thing that happens. I'm not saying this cannot be a spoiler for you because I really don't know if it's fully true, but I think it happens, and so I would feel it's wrong. Like, because for me, it will be the satisfaction of when Cal gets his own lightsaber, then it gets to be his color, but right now... It's gotta be that blue because his master is 100% a blue lightsaber dude. Like you see that guy, that Lasat dude in the flashbacks. That dude had a blue lightsaber, absolutely no questions. He's a blue lightsaber man. And so Cal's got to use the blue lightsaber before he earns his own color.
Well, there you go. Just like Rey will until the final moments of The Rise of Skywalker, when it cuts to credits just as she ignites a lightsaber and we never learn what color it was, is how I'm guessing that ends.
It'd be so funny if she just gets another blue lightsaber. It's just like, fucking here we go. Blue lightsabers till the end of time. I mean,
just completely forgotten Luke had a green one. We've just ignored that. Yeah. It just didn't happen.
I mean, fuck that. Like, the movies haven't even caught up to the idea of there being a yellow lightsaber. Like, we're still not even there yet. I don't even think in Attack of the Clones. I think they were going to put a yellow lightsaber in Attack of the Clones in the big Jedi scene, but they didn't because it was on a desert, and so it wouldn't look good on the desert. But I'm actually open to maybe because I know that eventually you get other lightsaber colors like yellow. Maybe Cal becomes a yellow guy. I don't know. I used to be very against the yellow lightsaber, but I've kind of grown accustomed. I'm kind of a fan of the yellow lightsaber these days.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on, Sean, to our second to last big topic of the day, which is we're going to talk Disney Plus, the new streaming service from our new corporate overlords. And Disney is gross, but this app is actually pretty good. It's
you should write an article and have that be the headline. Disney is gross, but this app is actually pretty good.
I don't know how else to say it, Sean, because Disney grosses me out, but I also know I've had a lot of fun with Disney Plus this week, and I think it's unambiguously one of the best streaming apps money can buy, especially given the price. Like, it has a gargantuan amount of content, including originals, including Disney stuff, Pixar stuff, Marvel stuff, old Disney Channel stuff, National Geographic stuff. Like, it's a pretty broad base of stuff. On day one, it had a ton of things. I think it is a really well laid out app. I've used it on my iPhone, iPad, and my Apple TV, and it's great on all three. I think the streaming video quality is the best I've seen, maybe other than Netflix, and even then I actually think some of it looks more sturdy to me than Netflix. So, and it's got 4K and HDR stuff, which I do not have a 4K HDR TV, but I've heard that it's very good. It gave us a new cut of A New Hope where Greedo yells McClunky, and that's fantastic. So it's a cool app. We'll talk about The Mandalorian in a second, but I mean, have you been using it? Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I'm using it on PlayStation, which is nice because that's like my main media hub is I just use my PS4. And the reason why I say that is because some streaming services like the Criterion Channel one do not have a console app. Like I can still watch those because I have I have a smart TV because all TVs are smart TVs these days. So, like, I can use those streaming services, but I prefer it all just to be on the PlayStation. So the PS4 app, it looks great. I mean, it's the same basic design as the app on anywhere else. It's very clean, which I like a lot. Here's a huge thing. There's a settings menu where you can decide whether or not you wanted to start auto-playing things as you hover over them. Netflix, what the fuck? Not just that, like, all streaming services. Why do you not have settings menus for preferences? How is this not a thing? What the fuck has happened that people think that you can't do preferences? Like, there should be a toggle for whether or not I want my fucking shit to minimize the video when it's playing credits on something. Because I don't want it to all the time. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. That's one that, like, Disney Plus doesn't have an option for that. I wish they would have it because it automatically minimizes stuff after a couple of seconds of credits. Sometimes I want it to leave the credits up if, like, it's a song, like for The Mandalorian. I really like the main theme of The Mandalorian. I like listening through the credits. I would prefer if they just left the credits up and didn't bump out to the screen. So you know, but it does allow you to toggle off like autoplay videos. And overall, the service, it's a good app, and I think it's interesting, like the way it feels to sort of browse compared to a Netflix, where I know there are other streaming services that are more specific. That I haven't used, like a CBS one or something like that. But this being all Disney content, it's kind of interesting how it's like, it's not a broad variety of things, but it's incredibly deep on each of the different, like, sort of sections you can go into. So it basically is, like, segmented into Disney stuff, Pixar stuff, Star Wars stuff, and Marvel stuff. And it's pretty...
And Nat Geo.
And Nat Geo, yeah. I mean, Nat Geo is not, like, one of the... They don't.
It's on the top.
I don't think on the PS4 app. It's in the. I feel like they're like the big.
It is on the other apps.
Okay, maybe I'm just sort of like blanking out because I haven't looked at any of the National Geographic stuff. I must confess. I didn't know that it would be on there. I was very shocked when I loaded it up. Like I saw something with the Nat Geo logo, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's one of their 5 badges, and it's just cool because they've got a lot of cool stuff, like the movie Free Solo and things like that are like very acclaimed and cool to have. So I just wanted to shout it out because there are things on here that will actually educate your children if you want to.
Yeah, but anyways, in each of like the major pools of content they have go very, very deep, but there's not like, you know, you're not going to see. I mean, there's nothing like R-rated or anything like that on it, right? Like, there's nothing like particularly adult.
No, I don't think they go up that high. That kind of stuff would probably go to Hulu. Like, they do have a lot of Fox movies, but it's stuff like The Sound of Music, things like that would be more family friendly. Yeah. So it's got a different vibe than something like a Netflix or Crunchyroll or Hulu or something where it's like, here's just like a bunch of stuff from a bunch of different places that feel very, very different. Whereas like the Disney Plus gives you access to a lot of content, but it feels overall relatively homogenized in terms of what you can actually go see. But yeah, you know, I'm not particularly interested in most of like the Disney or Pixar parts of it. Like, it's nice to have access to, but obviously I'm more interested in the Star Wars and Marvel stuff. For Marvel, it doesn't have Spectacular Spider-Man, which is a bummer. Like, I know this is like some kind of rights thing. It has that's owned by Sony, so
yeah. So there's lots of Marvel cartoons. It has like they've made like 4 fucking Spider-Man cartoons since Spectacular Spider-Man that I haven't seen anything of, and they're like all on there. So there's a lot of Spider-Man cartoons, but there's not the Spider-Man cartoon that you want to see. The X-Men anime series is on there, the old one, and that's cool to have. One recommendation I would have for people, because I think most people haven't probably seen it, is Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which is an animated series from around the time the Spectacular Spider-Man came out. That is on Disney Plus, and that is a very good cartoon if you want some fun, like Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and Hulk pounding around and having some fun Avengers times. That is a good cartoon to watch. For Star Wars, a big thing that's missing that I also kind of knew would be missing is the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars is not on there. Because I think that's like Cartoon Network produced that series, so that's probably why it is not on there. But so you have basically every Star Wars thing except for the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars shorts. But you have here's 70 different Lego Star Wars things that you probably didn't know existed. Here's the Ewok cartoon they made in the 90s, there's a
They have the making of documentary Empire of Dreams from the 2004 DVD set, which if you've never seen is really good. Yes. George Lucas lies in it a lot, but it's really fun. Yeah, it's a good one.
That documentary is very good. They don't have the Christmas special either. That's the other thing. Which especially with you're doing your whole Mandalorian thing. I mean, come on. The thing where Boba Fett fucking comes from is the Star Wars Christmas special. Lest we forget that animated delight in the holiday special. So it's not absolutely everything Star Wars video content you could possibly put, but it's pretty fucking close. It's more. There's more stuff in there than you would think, because you'd think it'll be the movies, it'll be the Clone Wars and Rebels and Resistance, the new cartoon, which I'll probably watch that after the second season's done, because the second season is going to be the last one. And it's and then maybe you remember that they did that Ewok one. But it's also here's all this Lego Star Wars stuff and these shorts that are also on their YouTube channel that they made a couple of years ago that do some side stories with other characters. There's a good variety of content there.
I should also say they don't yet have The Last Jedi or Solo, because those are still on Netflix.
Right.
Those will be coming near the end of December. Same with a couple of Marvel movies. They're going to have every MCU movie other than the Spider-Man ones, because obviously those are Sony. But yeah, those are coming. They're just not there yet. If you're wondering where Solo, if there's anyone out there going, "Where's Solo? I need Solo," it will be coming in December.
Yeah, it's I watched all of the Darth Maul episodes of Clone Wars. Then I need to watch the 5-minute section from Solo Star Wars Story, and then watch the Darth Maul episodes from Rebels. I want the Darth Maul cut of the history of Star Wars, because that's the only footage of Darth Maul you're missing that exists is the little bit from the Solo Star Wars Story. But anyways, critically, the most crucial thing that is on Disney Plus, the thing that everyone should drop what you're doing and go watch, is motherfucking Gargoyles is on Disney Plus, which of course it is. I hadn't thought about it that it was going to be on Disney Plus until it was there. And if you have not seen Gargoyles is so fucking good. I've only watched a little bit of it because I've seen most of Gargoyles when I was a kid, but I've never watched it all the way through because it's never been on another streaming service. But I watched the first couple of episodes, and it's Gargoyles is very good. If you want some good fucking Jonathan Frakes hamming it up as Xanatos in Gargoyles, there's your one-stop shop is Disney Plus. It has all the Xanatos you could possibly ask for.
Okay, so hey, future Jonathan here. This is where our technical problems came in, and we are unfortunately missing the master files for the rest of this episode, which means the Mandalorian review we were just about to transition into at this point is not here. We like it. It's a good show. It's a really fun Star Wars show. Episode 2 is particularly great. It's all very promising. And we will definitely talk about the show again. We will redo this segment next week as soon as we can, and we will also at that point have a third episode to talk about, so hopefully we can go into even more depth with the show and really give it its due. But unfortunately, there's no saving what we recorded here. But before we go for today's episode, we also did record a segment at the end where I challenged Sean to a sort of weird streaming TV trivia game. And there's really no way for us to re-record that in the future since the element of surprise would be gone and Sean knows all the answers now. I do have the raw version of Sean's audio, though, since he records that separately out in Colorado while I'm here in Iowa. And I was mostly reading from a script for this segment to begin with because I had written the game and I was giving him questions. So what I'm going to do here is recreate to the best of my ability what I was saying, and then you'll hear Sean responding from the original recording. It might be a little awkward, but this was a really fun segment. I didn't want to lose it, so I'm going to do the best I can. All right, here we go with our final segment for today. Let's play a game. So, Sean, I have created a game for us to play about the streaming TV phenomenon. We've got Apple TV Plus having launched earlier this month. Disney Plus is launching next week. HBO Max is launching next year. There's so many streaming TV platforms. The landscape is more crowded than ever. In fact, there are so many services out there, I am not sure you can distinguish between which ones are real and which ones are fake. So let's play a game about it. It's pretty simple. I've got a series of questions testing whether or not you can discern real streaming services from fake ones I have made up. There are 9 multiple choice questions. There's a lightning round at the end. I've got a sample question to kind of set us up at the beginning. The point system I've created, I think it's pretty simple. Every question that's a multiple choice question will have 5 points. If you get it right, you get 5 points. If you get it wrong, you get 0 points. And then the lightning round will have 18 possible points. So there's a total of 68 possible points. And I'm going to say you need 50 points to win.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Why did you make this so complicated?
Oh.
Why is there a point system? What's happening? Am I being graded?
A little bit.
What happens if I fail? If I fail, do I have to leave the podcast?
Maybe.
Okay.
Hey, Sean, let's go ahead and kick it off with a sample question to sort of show you what we're going for here. Here's my sample question. Which of these 2 services is a real platform for streaming Japanese anime in North America? Spicy Tuna or Crunchyroll?
Crunchyroll.
You are correct. 5 points.
Yay.
All right, so now let's go ahead and start the game off proper. First question, Sean. Which of these is an actual streaming service dedicated to delivering British cricket matches? There are 4 options. Striker HD, Willow TV, Wicket Plus, or Spin Bowl. Which of these is an actual British cricket streaming service?
What was the second one?
Willow TV.
Willow TV is my answer.
You are correct.
Yes. The other one sounded like things you would make up. That was how I answered that question.
All right, question number 2. Which of the following spellings of the word Jinx is the name of an esports streaming service?
Okay.
Is it Jinx, the normal spelling, Jinx, Jinx with a Y as in Pokemon, Jinx, Ginx, or Jinx, Jinks?
The Ginx, was that an option?
Yes.
I'm going to go with that one.
You're correct. 5 points.
Okay. Doing pretty good so far. I've never heard of... I want to make it clear. I've never heard of whatever the cricket one was or this... I don't know either of these.
Who would? They're extremely obscure. But let's go ahead to question number 3. Which of these 2 services is a real streaming platform licensed by American libraries for use by patrons? Okay. Is it Canopy, Kanopy, or Hoopla, Hoopla?
I'm pretty sure it's Canopy.
Nope. This is actually a trick question. They're both real.
Oh, okay.
They're both so ridiculous, I had to do it.
Because I've definitely used Canopy before, and I was pretty sure it was the library. Okay.
Yeah, they're very silly. I saw Hoopla, and I had to make a dumb question about it.
Hoopla!
All right, moving on to question number 4. Which of the following is a real streaming service in the UK for streaming domestic TV programming? 4 options, one of them is real. Is it Hazel TV, Cobb's HD, Acorn TV, or Chestnut?
Acorn.
That is correct.
I've heard of that one. That's how I answered that.
Oh, I had never heard of it before.
I knew that one existed.
All right, well, so far so good. Let's move on to question number 5. Is the Dove Channel the name for a streaming service of Christian programming or a promotional campaign for the popular brand of soap and other hygiene products?
Shit. It's weird how plausible.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the hygiene product. I'm going to say it's Dove is a hygiene product.
Ooh, incorrect.
Damn it.
Yep, it's Christian.
Damn it. I wanted to go with the one that seemed even more outlandish. Man, Dove got fucked, and now they have to just make Dove Max or Dove Plus now to do their streaming service.
And every time you buy a new bar of soap, you get another month free.
Yep.
All right, question number 6. Which of the following is a real video service or streaming channel? I'm going to read you a name and a description of that potential service. Is it Pantaflix, P-A-N-T-A, a streaming service for German television? Pandaflix, with a D, a streaming service for Chinese television? Pantherflix, a YouTube channel devoted to videos of wild panthers? Or Pajamaflix, an ASMR app aimed at relaxation and sleep aid? Which one is real?
Fuck, this one's the hardest one to guess so far. Pajamaflix?
The real one is Pantaflix over in Germany.
That was my second guess.
Yeah, I heard the word Pantaflix, and so then I went panda, pajama, panther, and I made this dumb question.
Okay. Someone should make... Are you sure? Did you Google if Pajamaflix exists? Did you fact check that? I'm going to fact check that. You go on with the next question while I Google.
Okay, you Google. Question number 7. Which of the following is not a real corporate conglomerate's tie-in video service? 5 options. One of these is fake. 4 of them are real. Is it AT&T TV Now, LG Channel Plus, T-Mobile Screen, Verizon Go 90, or Yahoo View? Which one of those is fake?
So I have to get the fake one.
Yes.
Can you go through them again?
Yeah, it's AT&T TV Now, LG Channel Plus, T-Mobile Screen, Verizon Go 90, and Yahoo View.
The T-Mobile one, T-Mobile Screen?
Correct.
That's my guess. Oh, phew. Huh.
Good job.
I have breaking news. Pajamaflix is not a thing. I was really hoping that seemed so plausible that I wanted to double check.
Very plausible, but unfortunately for now, Pajamaflix is still open for anyone who wants to make it. But let's go ahead to number 8. Which of the following is a real subscription service or app named for a modern slang term?
Okay.
Each of these is a modern slang term, plus what it might be. Is it Bay, an American subscription service for indie romance novels? Fetch, an app for Australian live TV? Shway, a European indie comics app? Or Slaps, a Canadian music streaming service?
Fetch?
You got it.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually tested this game the other night with my brother just to see what it was like, and this one messed him up because he thought I just took Fetch from the movie Mean Girls and that it couldn't possibly be real. But no, apparently Fetch is very popular with our friends down under.
There you go. Fetch.
All right, Sean, last multiple choice question for today, number 9. Which of the following is not a real live TV replacement service? These are services a la PlayStation Vue, Hulu Live TV, things like that. I'm going to give you 6 of these, and one of them is fake.
Okay.
Is it Fubo TV, F-U-B-O, Fubo, Cloud TV with a K and a W, Cloud, Philo as in philosophy, Pluto.tv, Snap.tv, or Xumo, X-U-M-O? Which of these is the fake one?
Pluto. It's fake.
No, the fake one is Snap TV. Pluto TV is real.
Damn. Snap TV is a better name than all the other ones.
And that's why I made the game. They are all very, very silly. Okay, so now, Sean, we are going to be going into the lightning round.
Okay.
Let's see how many points you have here so far. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. You have 30 points.
I already have a passing grade, so I'm good.
No, I said earlier you need 50 to win. You only have 30 points so far, so you've actually got to do really well on this lightning round.
What? This is a 10-question quiz. Okay, I mean, yes, there's a lightning round, but it's basically one of the lightning round should add up to 1. It's 10 questions. Each one should be worth 10%. You're fucking a bad teacher.
Be that as it may, I made the rules, and so you need... Well, you know what? We'll reduce this. I'll say you need 40 points to win, not 50, because you actually wouldn't have enough. I counted wrong. So there's going to be 18 options on this lightning choice round we're going to go through, and you'll get a point for each of those you get right. But anyway, let's go ahead and start the lightning round. The way this works, Sean, is I am going to give you a series of names of real services, but each of them is either a streaming video service or a porn site, and you have to pick which one is which.
Okay, so I'm saying, so you're giving me one, and then I'm picking which one it is.
Yes.
Okay.
For each one, you'll just tell me, I'll give you the name, and then you'll tell me streaming service, video service, or porn site. All right? Let's go ahead and get started. Our first option, Sean, is a service called Full Moon.
Normal streaming.
You are correct. It is a cult movie streaming service. The next one, Videos with a Z.
Porn.
Yep, that is a porn site. Next, Feelin with a big N at the end.
Normal.
Yes, it is the Hallmark Channel's streaming service.
Okay.
Next one is Team Skeet.
Wait, team or teen?
Team. It's Team, Skeet,
yeah.
Team Skeet.
I'm going to still say porn.
Yeah, it's porn.
Okay. When you said teen skeet, I'm like, though, that's definitely got to be some sort of porn bullshit. But then I was like, oh, maybe he said team. Still porn.
Mofos.
Like motherfuckers, so probably porn.
Yeah, it's porn.
Yep.
Next is Dazn, D-A-Z-N, all capital letters.
D-A-Z-N.
Yes. What is it?
Porn?
No.
Damn.
It is a international sports service, technically pronounced DAZN.
Okay. I was betting on the A being adult and the N being network. So that's why I went porn.
Nope, it's sports. Next one is TNA Flicks with an X.
See, now this is a trick one, because obviously, clearly, you just say porn for that. But it's so obviously porn. I'm going to say porn still.
Correct.
Okay.
Next one is Fakku, F-A-K-K-U.
That's porn. I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hentai.
Yes. I mean, it's just the Japanese pronunciation of the word fuck.
Next one, Brown Sugar.
Ah, fuck this. I don't want to say one of these. I'm going to say normal just to, not sound racist.
And you're correct. It is a site focused on African-American cinema, particularly blaxploitation.
Okay.
Next one, Boomerang.
How is it spelled? Is it just normal?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe there was a U in there. If there was U with an umlaut, I would say porn. It was a weird German porn site. I'm going to say normal.
You are correct. It's all the classic cartoons like Looney Tunes.
Oh, okay. So it's just that Boomerang. Okay. Yes.
All right, next one is Twisties with a Y at the end.
With a Y.
Yes, Twisties.
Porn?
Yes.
Okay. If it was IE, no. But porn, it was the same thing. There was one earlier that ended with the Z. I'm like, it's got to be porn.
All right, well, this next one is Keys Movies, K-E-E-Z Movies.
Normal?
No, it's porn.
Doesn't even make sense. Why? What?
Okay, the next one is Mubi, M-U-B-I.
Normal?
Yes, it's global cinema streaming stuff.
Okay.
Freud Box.
I want it to be porn, but I think it's probably still normal.
No, it's porn.
Really?
Yep. I found it on a list online.
I'm about to go to Freud Box. Give you the next one while I find out what's there.
Next one is Tubi, T-U-B-I.
T-U-B-I.
Yes.
Fuck. Normal.
Yeah, it's ad-supported free TV.
Okay. I'm having a hard time finding Freud Box, by the way. There's a lot of other things called Freud Box. I should probably not Google it and just go to freudbox.com, I'm guessing. Okay, give me what was the next one?
It's called Spool, S-P-U-U-L, Spool.
S-P-U-U-L.
Yes.
Porn?
No, it is Bollywood streaming from India.
Okay, see, if it was European, it would have been porn. If it's Indian, then that makes sense.
Next one, Mad Thumbs.
Porn?
Yes.
Okay.
And finally, last one, Peacock.
Is it just normal spelling?
Yeah, P-E-A-C-O-C-K, Peacock.
Yeah, so P-E-A, cock. Okay. Normal.
Yes, it's the new NBC streaming service, home of The Office.
No, of course, that makes sense. Also, by the way, Freud Box is definitely a porn site. Yep, I can confirm.
Well, anyway, Sean, you did very well on the lightning round, so you win. You have, by my count, something like 50, you have enough points. You won.
You came up with the most bizarre point scoring method. I just didn't understand why it was structured that way.
because the streaming landscape is very weird, and so the point system had to be weird too.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's better than what cable was, but it's still weird.
All right, so I think that's it for this week. This has been a long show, a tiring show, an exciting show, but I had fun.
I had fun too. But I want to play Star Wars. So let's wrap it up.
All right, I want to play Star Wars too. We will be back next week or sometime soon. We're going to be doing another Weekly Suit Gundam on Victory Gundam at some point. We've got lots coming down the pike. Thanksgiving's coming up. We'll see you later.
McClunky.